What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
Ya, Chapter 20. Soaring Strength, Captain Level. Advertise here. Heartbreaking. Liberation Fist. Natsuki's expression moved. Is this the evil boxing technique used by the top strongman Bangu in One Punch Man, when he was young? The prompt bar is unresponsive. But it felt like there was a fire burning inside me. Along with the heartbeat and blood, it spreads to the limbs and bones. Not only was the fatigue accumulated so far wiped away, but it was also forcibly suppressed by this fiery emotion, and the negative impact on the body was weakened to almost nothing. It's incredible. Is this the secret of boxing? No, at least not the explosive heart liberation fist. Because that hot emotion that makes people forget pain is called murderous intention. Breathe, exhale. After a simple breath, Natsuki's cross eyes seemed to be getting brighter and brighter. At this time, a figure with white light rushed from the front like thunder. Natsuki swung his arm to deflect the oncoming fist, grabbed his wrist with his backhand, pulled it in front of him, and punched out with his left hand. The process was smooth, without any unnecessary movements. The first impression he gave was that he was rough but extremely efficient. The fist almost grazed Yoruichi's face, taking away a strand of her hair and leaving a blood stain on her pretty and heroic face. Yoruichi's eyes narrowed. Although she missed, the murderous intention contained in it shocked her. It's not that this murderous intention is so scary. But the existence of murderous intent undoubtedly proves that some kind of change has occurred in Natsuki. In a flash of lightning, the two sides clashed dozens of times. Natsuki still follows the rules and makes dodging his first priority. The original purpose of setting up this rule was to train the body in pace and enhance mobility, but the purpose of training this was definitely not to escape the enemy's pursuit. On the contrary, it is to kill the enemy faster. Therefore, although Natsuki was dodging, he did not distance himself. While dodging, he was also looking for opportunities to counterattack. Not only that, this seemingly more difficult approach is actually easier and more satisfying than simply running away. Thinking, observing, sensing, all seem to have become unnecessary. For Natsuki, dodging is as natural as breathing. So does attack. That can no longer be called a skill. More like a street fight. There is no order at all. Direct and brutal. There is also a lot of cunning and shrewdness. If I had to put a label on it, it would be a beast. A beast that lives by hunting, it is a well-deserved combat expert. But unlike those who imitated his techniques and created boxing styles, there is no trace of the beast in Natsuki. He is who he is. However, the way of driving power has changed. Boom. Fists and feet collided. The air waves surged and expanded, turning into countless storms in just an instant, violently damaging the natural environment within a few hundred meters of the surrounding area. The two phantoms used space as a battlefield, regardless of up, down, front, left, and right, and ignored the pull of gravity to spin and turn. The rhythm and frequency are so fast that it's dizzying. The air that is constantly being squeezed and making explosive sounds is as dense as raindrops. The ground trembled under the impact. A wisp of air passed by, like a ripple. The stones on the ground were broken again and again until they turned into powder. This situation lasted for 2 or 3 minutes. In the end, Natsuki couldn't hold on any longer. He moved a beat slower and was shot down by Yoruichi. This time, my physical strength was completely exhausted. Can't get up anymore. Natsuki fell to the ground in a large shape, and only the rising and falling of his chest proved that he was still alive. Yoruichi doesn't feel well either. He sat down on the ground and put his hands on his knees. Breathing heavily and sweating profusely. There weren't many injuries visible on the surface. In fact, not counting muscle strains, there were 3 bone fractures, one of which was in the ribs, and the liver was also affected. The blood spilling from the corner of his mouth is the best evidence. Before today's special training began, Yoruichi never imagined that this situation would develop. If you hadn't been in such a bad state before, maybe you could have killed me. After resting for a while, Yoruichi suddenly said. I didn't think so. Natsuki's voice was weak. Every strike of yours contained killing intent, which made me not even consciously take it seriously. I tried my best and almost stopped. But it's true that you didn't want to kill me. After all, you didn't use heat in the end. Ray, so I rule out the possibility of you losing control and running wild. But then again, since it's not out of control, what was your state just now? Yoruichi questioned. Natsuki did not answer directly, but asked a seemingly irrelevant question. Yoruichi, you said that there are no shortcuts to white hits, and you don't have such excellent conditions as me. So what makes you spend so much energy? Will white hits be trained to this point? Are you asking about my original intention? Sorry, it's too far away. I've forgotten it. I always feel like it's like this when I come back to my senses. Yoruichi said nonchalantly. I don't know if I don't want to say it or if I really forgot. Natsuki didn't bother to dig into it. Really, I'm different from you. I do it out of interest. Only addiction will give you the highest concentration. You said it right. People who are really good at fighting are better at catching breaths than Reiatsu. Such words. The so-called breath, she refers to the flow of air, breath refers to breathing, and breathing is a kind of instinctive reaction, so it can be understood as an instinctive reaction to changes in the outside world. I kept thinking about how to achieve this step during these 7 days. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the thinking ability that humans are proud of is actually an obstacle. So, at the moment of crisis, I gave up thinking, and strong concentration seemed to penetrate my body and mind. At that moment, new power spurted out, and that was instinct. Instincts are stimulated without dead rationality, like a beast but more cunning than a beast. While dodging with the sixth sense, every attack contains murderous intent, focusing on the opponent's vital points. Although I don't think this state can be called a boxing technique, I still gave it a name: heart-exploding liberation fist. Liberating one's own instincts, breaking the enemy's heart. It can also be understood as destroying one's own human heart, freeing one's instincts, and fighting as one pleases. That's probably what it means. Listen to him. Yoruichi pursed his lips tightly and looked at Natsuki with complicated eyes. After a while, he said quietly, "You are really a monster. It doesn't matter whether it's a boxing technique or not." Originally, Natsuki's foundation was very weak. Just 17 days can only help him initially adapt to the intensity of combat. To put it bluntly, it is to feel the atmosphere of the battlefield and exercise his ability to withstand pressure. Don't expect to learn any exquisite moves. Of course Yoruichi does, and lots of it. But there is no need to teach. The more you teach, the more it hinders thinking. It is better to go directly to actual combat and learn as much as you can. What you learn in actual combat can naturally be used in actual combat. The experience Yoruichi imparts verbally has nothing to do with techniques or anything like that. It is entirely focused on handling the details and timing of battles. Natsuki absorbed it quickly, at least twice as fast as expected. But no matter how quickly he absorbs it, it can't change the fact that his foundation is weak, but Natsuki has mastered the method of stimulating instinct on his own. Use instinct to make up for shortcomings in awareness, experience, and skills. In this way, Natsuki is like a computer with the latest operating system, able to make full use of the performance that high-end hardware should have. Although there are still some shortcomings, they are not harmful. Now you are initially qualified to compete with captain-level people. Starting from tomorrow, I will use weapons. Yoruichi stood up and looked down at Natsuki. There is no arrogance, just full of fighting spirit. I won't treat you like a kid who doesn't understand anything anymore. You haven't used your full strength yet. Natsuki was a little surprised. At present, he has reached the vice-captain level with Reiatsu alone. It is certain that he will enter the captain level in 10 days. Not to mention his physical ability as an ace, combined with the newly learned, heart-breaking liberation fist, his combat power has increased exponentially. The weaker, less suited captain of Bankai is no match for him. Even so, Yoruichi didn't use his full strength. Yoruichi said proudly, don't underestimate people. I admit that using only white hits is almost impossible to do anything to you, but fighting is not such a simple matter. Whether it's killing or winning, there are many ways. You should be aware of this. Natsuki was convinced. Zanpakuto has all kinds of strange abilities. Each type of Kido is also different. If a fight breaks out, it's hard to predict what the final outcome will be. Even if you don't watch, you will be killed by the plot. Just highlight one outrageous thing. There are a lot of interesting goods there at Kazuki. I plan to borrow them and use them. If your performance in the next 7 days still satisfies me, I will teach you the tricks I just used. But it's up to you whether you can learn it or not. That's it. At the end, Yoruichi couldn't help but feel a little emotional. It won't be long before the trump card at the bottom of the box is revealed. Having a genius disciple really makes people feel happy and sad at the same time. I am happy that I have a successor, but I am sad that I almost have nothing to teach. Natsuki couldn't understand her conflicting feelings. When he heard that there was an opportunity to learn Shuangju, he became interested. In his opinion, it was a unique skill tailor-made for him, and it would definitely be worthwhile to learn it. As for whether you can learn it, okay, let's be honest. He has confidence in the prompt bar. Chapter 21. Roll them all up for me. After a sumptuous dinner, Natsuki felt very satisfied. Today was a fruitful day. In a great mood, he roped in Orihime and Sato for additional training. It's not anything particularly complicated, just a simple night run. Urahara Kazuki has made it very clear. The so-called spiritual power is the power acting on spiritual objects. As long as the spiritual power is improved, the body in the soul state can move freely, even far beyond the limits of flesh and blood. Shinigami is such a thing. The reverse is true for those who have perfected the technique. Just like what Ginjo Kugo said, the perfection technique is controlled by flesh and blood. To use the perfection technique freely requires unimaginable tyranny of physical strength. It's not difficult to do this. Just practice until you die. Don't worry about human limits. From the moment of awakening, a full-breasted practitioner is no longer a normal person. Spiritual power drives the soul, and the soul drives the body. The body holds everything. The perfection technique is precisely the ability to control the material soul. Exercising physical fitness is equivalent to exercising the ability to control the material soul. At the same time, it will resonate with the power of perfection deep in the soul, echoing from a distance, further stimulating it. Like a faucet expanding, the flow of water surges. Develop both horizontally and vertically. In this way, how can we not become stronger? Perhaps the guaranteed benefits of the Saiyan spirit were too tempting, and Natsuki became addicted to it, unable to stop, and trained endlessly, just like a real Saiyan. When Orihime and Sato dragged their exhausted bodies and left shakily, Natsuki had not only finished 20 kilometers, but had even jumped up and down the shrine steps twice. Sweat like rain, Reiatsu overflows. Transpiration like slowly boiling water. Not only was it not burned dry, it was still pouring out. It's really getting stronger that can be seen with the naked eye. Orihime and Sato were so envious that their eyes turned red, but there was nothing they could do. They couldn't practice it at all. Even if they had the double heavenly shield in hand, they still didn't have the physical strength to activate it. He didn't go very far before he couldn't move. In the end, he was carried back by Yoruichi. After sending them back, Yoruichi ran to the Urahara store to pick up the goods and observe the situation here in order to give someone some strength for training later. It seems to be going very smoothly. Arriving at the underground training ground and looking at the dusty battle, Yoruichi walked over to the bystanders with great interest. Also, that kid almost died 2 days ago. The Zanpakuto was also damaged by the store manager. Fortunately, I got a new one, but it doesn't look that good. It's not as normal as the original one. Jinda rolled her eyes and complained while chewing the bread. It's not that easy to get back Shinigami's power. If it weren't for his special situation, generally speaking, he would have given up after the Not and Soul Sleep were destroyed. Chat room. The winner was also decided not far away. As expected, Ichigo lost to Urahara again. He was so tired that he lay on the ground breathing heavily. Urahara looked calm. Era, Miss Yoruichi, why are you back at this time? Didn't you develop a lot of training props for stealth maneuver before? I'm here just for it. I see. I remembered to put it in the warehouse. Tessai should remember where it is and ask him to help you find it later. Don't worry about this yet. How are you preparing over there? Yoruichi pouted at Ichigo. It's hard to say. Urahara restored Zanpakuto to its original shape, took back his cane, and looked back at Ichigo, who was bickering with Jinda and being ridden on his head by Xiaoyu, his eyes unclear. Although I passed my 3 stages of the test at an unexpected speed, I am not sure how far I can achieve it. I just hope that I will not encounter 2 strong opponents at the beginning, so that I may still have a chance to use it. Transform into a divine body, and then become strong enough to save Miss Kuchiki. Yoruichi frowned slightly. I'm more or less used to your unrealistic ideas from time to time, but do you really think that Ichigo can save Rukia Kuchiki from Gote 13, from Aizen if he learns Bankai? Who knows, since Mr. Kurosaki has this plan, then I will help him and just try my luck. Urahara shrugged. Speaking of which, what about Mr. Natsuki's situation? How come he needs to use training tools? Quote. Yoruichi was silent. Originally it was just a casual question, but seeing her reaction, Urahara couldn't help but become interested. I still trust Ms. Yoruichi's ability. After all, I have benefited a lot. It stands to reason that nothing unexpected will happen. But now it seems that the violent Reiatsu reaction in the past few days is not just for the other party. It's so easy to apply pressure. If there is any surprise, there is only one, that is that I underestimated that boy's potential. Yoruichi scratched his head in slight annoyance. I can't understand why it can grow so fast. It's like a special creature that can adapt to drastic changes in the environment and evolve in a very short time. Thanks to him, I have become a lot stronger. This is really not an exaggeration on her part. Yoruichi has just mastered the instant coax technique, and her proficiency is low, so she can easily hurt someone by mistake. If Natsuki hadn't grown up too fast, she would never have used this technique to deal with Natsuki. Unexpectedly, Natsuki actually resisted the pressure. Of course, thanks to Orihime's presence, what does a broken arm or leg mean? After using it a few times, not only did Natsuki get used to it, but Yoruichi himself became more and more comfortable with it, and because he had retired for 100 years, his body, which had been away from the battlefield for a long time, gradually recovered and was almost at its peak. Things have evolved to this point, and it's hard to tell who is helping whom with special training. I don't even know what he will look like in a few days. Tisk, is it so that teaching a disciple is such a troublesome thing? Quote. Urahara's eyelids jumped. She originally thought that Ichigo was growing fast enough, but now it seems that the pressure on him is not enough. Mr. Natsuki may be of great help, but it's not fair to place your hopes on an outsider. I plan to try and let Mr. Kurosaki complete Bankai before going to Soul Society. On the other side, Ichigo suddenly felt a chill rushing to his forehead, as if he was about to be in disaster. Chapter 22, the Perfection Technique version of Instant Coax. 7 days later. Guarded forest. The sky is clear and blue, and birds are circling in the sky. The temperature is rare and refreshing, and the bright but not burning sunshine shines all over the earth. Suddenly, 2 figures, one after the other, rushed from the end of the horizon of the mountains and sky. It looks like they are racing, but in fact one is chasing them in front, trying every means to interfere, while the other is moving forward quickly while constantly resolving the crisis. Sometimes he leaps through the air, sometimes he dives into the forest, using the complex terrain to get rid of the opponent, or the opponent uses him to slow down his progress. Sometimes they get entangled together and fight with fists and feet, showing their ruthlessness. The situation is tense and the scene is intense. The strange thing is that the movement is very small, and it has a natural feeling, as if it is just two birds playing, perfectly integrated with the surrounding environment. If someone sees it, they will definitely be frightened and their scalp will become numb. This is basically two killing machines competing for performance, as if AI and AI are playing Go, hollow and careless, with a cold murderous intention in the dullness. No one had murderous intentions, but every move was aimed at the vital point. You chase me. Finally, we arrived at the mountain behind the shrine at noon, an empty area that had been razed to the ground for some reason. Call. Natsuki dodged and landed, holding his sore knees with both hands, and let out a long breath. The scarlet cross in his eyes disappeared and turned back into golden pupils. At this time, an alarm suddenly rang. But it was quickly pressed down. He straightened up and turned to look at Yoruichi, who put away the alarm clock. What's the next test? There is none left. I said, there's no next test. Yoruichi spread his hands. I have arranged all the training I can think of, and you have passed them one by one. On the first day, find the dummy hidden somewhere in the mountains and destroy it. On the second day, restrain your aura and hide. On the third day, I will collect the clues I buried in the town and compile them into a complete piece of information to decipher. On the fourth day, I will deal with all kinds of weapons with my bare hands. Same as above for the fifth day. Same as above for day 6. On the seventh day, that is, today, it is a competition to see who reaches Naruki City first. The person who arrives first will chase and kill the person who arrives later. Although you are slower than me, you will also return to your place within the specified time. That's it. Flat. At this point, according to tradition, I should issue you a Ji-Chuan certificate. Once you understand these thoroughly, it will be a Ji-Chuan without permission. However, those things that assassins only use are not important to you, so put aside this part, and you are only one step away from nothing is allowed. Although the metaphor is used as a joke, it is basically true. You said, only one step away. What you mean is, Natsuki is no stranger to the rules of Neon Kendo. He has mastered all the skills of the school and is qualified to represent the school to recruit disciples and pass on the profession. Yoruichi said that he is only one step away, which means there is still something, at least there is still something left. There is one trick not taught. Thinking back to the conversation 7 days ago, the answer is self-evident. Yes, it's what you were thinking of. I thought you had forgotten it. You were obviously very excited at the time. Yoruichi teased. Natsuki rolled his eyes and remained silent. How busy these days have been. All kinds of training not only consume physical strength, but also consume mental energy. Gradually, this matter was forgotten. Without further ado, I'm going to Soul Society the day after tomorrow. I don't know how much you can learn in such a short time, but I keep my promise and teach you the secrets of white hits. Yoruichi is straightforward. Natsuki also cheered up and listened carefully. Before I explain, I would like to ask you that you have also experienced Schwangwo. What is your experience of it? Yoruichi asked rhetorically. Natsuki answered without thinking. The technique of using other powers to enhance the power of fists and kicks is very similar to using Reiatsu to wrap your fists and hit others. Yes, this is the essence of instant Coax. Yoruichi readily agreed, and then added. But compared to spiritual power, Schwangju uses the transformed Kido Reiatsu, so compared to ordinary Reiatsu, the power will be much stronger, with one punch and one kick. It can exert destructive power comparable to that of art. Inspire other forces to break the boundaries of existing forces. So classic. How do I master Kido Reiatsu? Natsuki asked the key. It's called Kido. In fact, any technique can be classified as Kido. Shinigami has Shinigami's techniques, which you can't learn. But in my opinion, the abilities of Yu, Inoue, and Sato are also a special kind of Kido. After all, look, doesn't Inoue need a word spirit when he activates his abilities? Although he has practiced a lot recently, it can already be omitted. Natsuki deeply agrees with Yoruichi's statement. The name says it all. Although it is rather special, it is not difficult to see from Ichigo's full light technique that it can indeed be wrapped in one's body, so it seems that it may be possible to use up the full light to replace the normal Kido Reiatsu. Sure enough, Yoruichi mentioned this right away. Your Reiatsu step is to use the material soul under your feet as a springboard. When activated, there will be an emerald green light. This light is actually Kido Reiatsu. You only need to strengthen this power to a certain extent to make it qualitatively change, and then by concentrating on the shoulders and back, you may be able to practice the instant Coax. I see. I'll try. Natsuki adjusted her breathing and waited patiently for her physical strength to return. Not only is he physically strong now, but his recovery ability is also extraordinary. When his physical strength is almost exhausted, he only needs to rest for 3 to 5 minutes to recover 1/3 of his energy. The level of pervert is comparable to that of the zone fruit user from the pirate next door. While Natsuki was resting, Yoruichi ran for a walk in the front yard of the shrine. Although she was sweating profusely and very tired, she could give Orihime and Sato verbal instructions without any problem. This is the result of short-tongued people. The principle of instant coax is simple, and it doesn't require much guidance. What is more important is that someone is watching over you to prevent yourself from being blown into pieces. However, only those who are truly good at manipulating spiritual power are qualified to practice instant coax, so such an exaggerated accident is unlikely to happen. At best, it is not stable enough. When his physical strength was restored to half, Natsuki couldn't wait to try it. Mastering the perfect light by cheating on the prompt bar is essentially a proficient application of the basics of the perfect technique, thus meeting the basic conditions for practicing instant coax. But in practice, it still inevitably comes to a head. His shirt burst and his skin turned red as if burned. The pain made Natsuki's eyelids jump. It also feels tricky. The unformed Kido is just a ball of Kido Reiatsu, which is further strengthened, compressed and concentrated on the shoulders and back. In theory, any Shinigami can practice it. The full-bringing technique version of instant coax is obviously more difficult. It requires extracting the soul from matter in order to make the full-bringing light appear. Intuition tells Natsuki that a person who does not have the property of envelopment will never be able to master it even if they spend their whole life practicing it. Fortunately, the medium of his eye of annihilation is the eye, and the ability acts on the body itself, so it certainly meets the conditions. Then the only possible reason for failure is lack of proficiency. Maximize the extraction of the soul in the air and concentrate it on the shoulders and back. No, the medium is wrong, it cannot be air. Natsuki continued to try, but successive failures made him realize that he was going the wrong way. Shinigami's Kido Reiatsu comes from oneself, that is to say, the object I want to extract should be my own soul. Yes, that's it. Extracting my own soul makes the full light seep out from the inside out. In this process it continues to strengthen and compress, and finally condenses on the shoulders and back, like wearing a suit of armor. No, it's a propeller. It's an engine. Figured out the key. Natsuki's eyes lit up. Can't wait to try it again. This time, he succeeded. But it also failed. No, the intensity is too low, it can't be called instant coax at all. Looking at the emerald green light surging on his shoulders, Natsuki frowned. You can indeed feel that the driving force similar to using the spirit child's steps makes the body become lighter, and the fists and kicks are more powerful, but there is no manic and explosive feeling that Shuangju should have. Moreover, it consumes a lot of energy, and the spiritual power will be exhausted in a short time. The price-performance ratio is too low. It's not even a semi-finished product, it's a complete failure. If you can't use it alone, then how about activating it with the Annihilation Eye? Chapter 23. The smile will not disappear, it will only move. Advertise here. Thinking of this, Natsuki opened his scarlet cross eyes. Spirits in the atmosphere rush into the body crazily, creating whirlwind-like vortices around them, gradually accumulating an invisible force inside the body, as if a biological force field wraps around every cell, giving it superhuman power to overwhelm mountains and seas. People with unstable minds simply cannot bear the psychological gap caused when their strength recedes like a tide. But choosing to shelve it in order to escape is also a foolish move. Although Natsuki has the confidence to become a strong person, he does not think that he can resist all temptations like a strong person now. Therefore, behind his dedicated training, in addition to the attractive benefits of Saiyan spirit, there is another reason: to make his heart stronger. If human beings live a life of millions with a salary of 1,000 yuan, they may not be able to calm down, but if they live a life of billions with a salary of 100 million yuan, they will only regret it even if they lose the most. I still live my life as I should, it's just that I can't do some more exaggerated things. This 100 million is a reflection of inner strength. Today's Natsuki is undoubtedly on the right path. He followed his own conjecture and also followed the theorem that Fushenjutsu brings out the power of deeply loved objects, and used the Annihilation Eye as the object to bring out the Kido Reiatsu whose deep processing should exist. If the Annihilation Eye is regarded as a Kido type ability, then it must have a special Kido Reiatsu, but it usually functions like an energy to activate the ability. Wait a minute, if I use up this energy, won't the ability blessing be ineffective? The more Natsuki thought about it, the more it made sense. The main thing is that if his conjectures are correct, then the result will most likely be like this. Natsuki was a little reluctant and couldn't help but try. This time, the emerald green glow first ignited the eyes, forming two flames in the eyes, which made people think of a certain black rock shooter. Then the fire set a prairie fire, and the glow exploded, sweeping across the whole body. Boom. The earthquake was violent. While the center of Natsuki's feet collapsed downwards, the spider web cracks spread to 10 meters, and a huge pit appeared. A wave of unbridled shaking of the atmosphere that was comparable to that of a captain-level Reiatsu. In the eyes of creatures with souls, the space itself appeared to be unstable, with black shadows looming, like mist and water splashing from endless dark matter through the thin space. It is a real disaster for ordinary humans, and having a soul will become the cause of death. The front courtyard of the shrine. Yoruichi was instructing Sato on how to punch better when suddenly, Reiatsu hit him on the head. It was not a catastrophic disaster, but the feeling of being caught off guard physically and mentally was still not pleasant. If they hadn't had several similar experiences before and had a certain degree of resistance, Orihime and Sato would have fainted. Captain level is too far away for them now. Miss Yoruichi. This is, where is the person? Orihime subconsciously wanted to find someone to answer his questions, but when he turned around, he found that Yoruichi had long disappeared. Sato on the side is a sensible person. Although it's a little different from usual, this is Natsuki's Reiatsu. There are no foreign enemies here. With Miss Yoruichi, nothing will happen. If it doesn't work, I still have you, Inoue. The implication is that no matter what happens, you can still save your life, and we will discuss other issues later. Yoruichi, who has returned to his prime, truly deserves the name, Flash Goddess. A Shunpo, not to mention compared with Somersault Clouds, but also broke Shinigami's understanding of Shunpo. Without touching the ground with your feet, you can travel 10 miles in an instant. Most people can't even see her shadow. By the time she appeared, people had already arrived at the back mountain. Seeing Natsuki's appearance, I couldn't help but be shocked. The green flames all over her body meant that she had never seen the Hokage, otherwise she would definitely associate this scene with the 8 inner gates. After all, they are too similar, and the feeling of violent beast-like power is exactly the same. Natsuki stood on the ground, her body like a crater, and endless Reiatsu spewed out. If you dare to get close, it's a trivial matter to be blown away. If you try to suppress it, the result will probably be no better than using thousands of humans to block the crater of an erupting volcano. Fortunately, the situation is still under Natsuki's control. Seeing Yoruichi's arrival, he turned off the Annihilation Eye, and cut off the supply of Shunku from the source. Reiatsu fell off a cliff. The green flame goes out. Everything was restored to its original state, leaving only a mess all around. Seeing that he was fine, Yoruichi felt relieved, and approached with a strange look on his face and asked, "Don't tell me that you have already mastered Shunku." Natsuki felt a little complicated at this time. He was silent for a while and said calmly, "Judging from the results, I have completed the training. I extracted the Reiatsu produced by the Annihilation Eye to arm my whole body. No matter how you look at it, it can be said that it worked, but your Annihilation Eye has been reduced to an energy supply device, turning the power you originally used to strengthen your physical abilities into an equivalent amount of Kido Reiatsu, right?" Yoruichi suppressed a smile and took over the conversation. Chapter 24, Golden Light Spell, corrected. Advertise here. If you really comply with that sentence, the smile will not disappear, it will only transfer from other people's faces to your own. So is strength. Natsuki took the power of Annihilation Eye and used Shuang Shu. Its power is amazing, but it is just another expression of power. The quantity remains unchanged. Natsuki's Annihilation Eye, plus instant Coax, and double magical and martial arts, ideas to overwhelm all enemies were ruined. It can only be switched and cannot be used simultaneously. Although there is an additional combat mode, switching forms according to the situation like Diga can definitely come in handy, but he still can't help but feel disappointed. If 1 plus 1 cannot be greater than 3, then what's the point of practicing this thing? Might as well complete the transformation. After Ginjo's gang seized Ichigo's power, they all transformed into 2 stages. This one is just a left-handed transformation. Well, don't be discouraged. You have already taken the hardest step. Seeing that Natsuki was depressed, Yoruichi patted him on the shoulder and comforted him, adhering to his duty as a master. This is the highest secret of white hits. I have practiced it for decades. It is thanks to you that I can master it skillfully. And you have mastered the trick with just a few words from me. You have learned the essence and turned it into your own move. It is already a skill. It's an unbelievable thing. I believe that with your talent, as long as you have the patience to spend tens or hundreds of years to think carefully, you will definitely come up with a better way to make it perfectly compatible. Tens or hundreds of years. Natsuki couldn't help but roll his eyes. Having said this, it would be better to just suggest that he give up and go to Soul Society to become a Shinigami after his death to practice the genuine Shunku. Yoruichi was obviously taking pleasure in his misfortune. It was probably because she was progressing so fast that she felt very unfulfilled as a master, so now that she has returned to normal, she has instantly regained her confidence. After all, the only female head of the Shihuan family is also a genius, how could she not be a little arrogant? But Schadenfreude is nothing but Schadenfreude, and this matter really cannot be rushed. Natsuki calmed down and was about to ask for some advice on the use of Shuhuang, so that he could make adjustments later. At this moment, the prompt bar that he had high hopes for began to refresh the screen again. The practical value of the instant Coax, taught to you by your master has been greatly weakened due to various reasons, which makes you very disappointed. However, both misfortune and blessing depend on each other. You have gained some insights in the process of practicing instant Coax. The perfection technique is the power of love, and love comes from oneself. Tapping into oneself may allow the perfection technique to show its true full picture like a homecoming. You know that the core of the perfection technique is the Soul King fragment, so, you choose to digest it completely, at the cost of pushing the basic perfection technique to a higher level. Click. Vaguely, Natsuki seemed to hear a sound like breaking glass. Then something gushes out from the depths of the soul like water and is absorbed by the body and mind. This moment, as a perfect master, he took an unprecedented step. This is a great achievement that has never been achieved by all the perfect masters in the past and present. From a lucky man who accidentally received the Spirit King's favor, he turned into a thief who stole the Spirit King's power. Even if someone wants to collect the parts of the Soul King to find him, they won't be able to extract any remaining body from him. The reason is simple: what is eaten is digested. No nutrients are left at all. There are not even food residues, so what can be extracted from it? And the result of doing this is, the original framework of the perfect technique was shattered. Perfectionists can continue to evolve and transform like Hollow, with a higher upper limit. Perhaps the fundamental reason why perfectionists have not created a complete power system so far is that they have never truly possessed this power. Just as this thought flashed through Natsuki's mind, the prompt bar appeared again. You have realized that the true value of perfection technique has nothing to do with controlling external material souls, but lies in tapping your own power of perfection technique. With the inspiration brought by instant Coax, and combined with the evolved perfection technique, you have understood the golden light spell. This is the true Fushinjutsu transformation, and it is theoretically something that every perfectionist practitioner can practice. It is a mystery, tailor-made for them. As the practice time gets longer and longer, the complete light will change from green to gold, and will be close to materialization. When you fully master it, it will turn into a dazzling golden color. Integrated offense and defense, invincible, can be enhanced with swordsmanship, perfectly compatible with alien power systems, and wish fulfillment technique. As the text appeared, Natsuki felt that his body seemed to have added new muscle memory out of thin air. A thought came to my mind. Golden light burst out of the body. Just like wearing a cloak, the surroundings are reflected in a golden color, and even the strong sunlight above the head cannot hide its color. He is truly brilliant and arrogant. The scarlet cross eyes that originally looked a bit evil were accentuated with a somewhat divine temperament. The first thing that comes to mind when seeing that scarlet color is not blood, but the flames that burn away sins. Natsuki lowered his head and glanced at his body. He realized the full light when he encountered Kenpachi, and is highly proficient in the basic full light technique. Although it is not as pervert as Dao Yugen Aura, it has also reached the minimum standard of materializing golden light. Now he raised his hand and punched his chest with a little force. Boom. Air waves emerged and dust stirred up. Yoruichi's ponytail was blown wildly, and his face was covered in dust. Bah! She spat on the ground a few times and looked at Natsuki in dissatisfaction and surprise. Such a powerful blow hit his body, but he was unscathed. This has to hit a person and not fly more than 100 meters. Where are you acting? It's nothing, I just gained something new with your encouragement. Natsuki was calm, but the smile on his lips revealed his thoughts. No way. Just now, he hit his chest covered in golden light with a fist covered in golden light. The latter was unscathed, which meant that the defensive nature of the golden light curse was far greater than its offensive nature. With his physical strength, it is honestly very difficult to be hurt by swords, especially after using Reiatsu. His defense is actually very high. But no one will mind if it becomes stronger. Aizen is the best example. Without Hogyoku's fused immortal body, how could he have the confidence to speak harshly to Urahara and others who were attacking him at that time and crush their plans one by one? And it's not just about defense. Natsuki released the heat ray elsewhere, and a small beam of light that was not exaggerated swept through the forest in the distance, causing widespread destruction. And this did not change his slowly improving physical abilities. In other words, the golden light spell can serve as the second energy source of the heat ray, or it can also be the main one. Because in this way, there is no need to worry about using heat rays to return the body to its original state, and heat ray freedom has been initially achieved. It can only be said that it is worthy of being called the secret essence of perfection technique in the tooltip. The improvement of perfection technique is indeed comparable to what Shunken is to white hits and Bankai is to Zanpakuto. Natsuki, who has mastered such techniques, cannot be called weak even at the captain level. This is a big step forward compared to the previous goalkeeper, who could only compete with captain-level warriors with his enhanced physical strength and heart-exploding liberation fist. Chapter 25 Evolve Again. Instant Coax Indestructible King Kong. Have you gained something from my encouragement? Isn't this too fast? Yoruichi's expression froze. No matter how overestimated it is, it's still far from enough. Especially when Natsuki enthusiastically started to explain, show off, the new ability that he had just realized, the prompt bar said it was that. The heart that had been so toughened by the cruel reality broke through again. Yoruichi looked at Natsuki with doubt in his eyes. I doubt this guy is human at all. Instead, some kind of monster in human skin is gradually resurrecting and regaining its past glory. Otherwise there is no way to explain why this phenomenon occurs. Yoruichi very much agrees with what Natsuki once said to Orihime and Sato. Understanding the nature of power helps to master the power itself. But it's not normal for this to happen to Natsuki. Because it stands to reason that he doesn't understand the full-bringing technique. On the contrary, Yoruichi and Urahara are aware of the existence of the full-bringing technique, and have heard of and maybe even come into contact with a group called the full-bringing technique. Otherwise, after treating Orihime and Sato on the day of the attack, Urahara would not have asserted that their ability to awaken existed in their souls. Just because of his words, people can't help but shift their attention to Ichigo, thinking that Ichigo is the key to awakening abilities. Subconsciously, there is the illusion that everyone has this potential, but they just woke up because they were lucky enough to meet Ichigo. This also led Orihime and Sato to regard their abilities as extremely special. They subconsciously felt that this was a case that could not be replicated, so they did not continue to investigate further. Why not make it clear? It may be that the murder of perfectionists 10 or 20 years ago made Urahara worry that these young people would be unable to restrain their curiosity after knowing the existence of perfection, and eventually get into trouble. Perhaps it was to hide the relationship between Wanshianjutsu and the Soul King. If you are not completely sure based on just those few words. So by hand-making 2 Soul King candidates, Kosame and Jinda, as well as Hogyoku who reacts to Soul King parts, it can be proved, right? As a close friend who grew up together and a family member like brothers and sisters, Yoruichi knows all about Urahara's secrets. The more you know, the more you realize how unnatural the anomaly that happened to Natsuki is. It was okay at first. But since his ability was fully awakened, he has completely ceased to be a human being. After encountering Zaraki Kenpachi, she mastered the essence of the perfection technique without any teacher. Not to mention the growth rate that was so stable and efficient that it was almost weird. A few days ago, she understood a kind of instinctive fighting method because of her few words. Technology. Today, with the same few words, she turned around and mastered instant coax. Although she was relieved because the practicality was lower than the expected valuation, she was unexpectedly caught off guard again. And the breakthrough happened to be the Fushin technique that Natsuki shouldn't have understood. How incredible. It's like a man who doesn't know how to use a knife and doesn't even know that the weapon he's wielding is called a knife. Yet he creates a set of knife skills that make all swordsmen feel inferior. If that's not incredible, what is? Congratulations. Although the practice of instant coax failed, it would be nice to have a better substitute. Yoruichi took a deep breath and pretended to smile calmly. Failed to practice. This is not certain. This time it was Natsuki's turn to lecture. Yoruichi, have you ever thought that Shunku can become even stronger? Huh, what do you mean? Yoruichi's eyes flashed. Natsuki raised a brow. Looking at you, you obviously have an idea. Let me guess, the white hits have become immutable, so the only way is to merge into the stronger Kido Reiatsu. The original Shunku used pure Kido Reiatsu, but the real power of Kido, or spells lies in its strange and wonderful uses, so I speculate that the next step for Shunku is to incorporate magic with special effects. Kido. You are right. This is indeed a choice. Now I am also working in this direction. What's wrong? Don't you still have expectations for instant coax? Yoruichi joked, but he didn't expect that Natsuki would seriously correct him. It's not that I expected it, but I've already made it a reality. Sorry Yoruichi, I'm ahead of you this time. In front of Natsuki's eyes, a few lines of ink text gradually faded away. But it's vaguely identifiable. Golden light spell can generate high-quality Kido Reiatsu, and the effect of instant coax partially overlaps. Since both are highly compatible techniques, they can be combined into one. You have comprehended a new instant coax, and you named it Instant Coax King Kong is indestructible. Hearing this, Yoruichi's expression froze again. Just highlight the echo between the beginning and the end. Chapter 26 set off, Target Soul Society. Advertise here. Time passes bit by bit. The summer vacation was half over before I knew it. Finally, it was time to head to Soul Society. August 10th. It was originally scheduled to leave on the 7th, but it was postponed for 3 days. The reason has to do with Ichigo. For this reason, Natsuki's exclusive nanny Orihime had been stationed at the Urahara store 3 days ago. Only Sato was left to follow Natsuki and practice hard, because he knew that Ichigo would definitely become stronger, and he could only have a chance to catch up by hugging Natsuki's thigh. Let's fight together in the future. 1 o'clock in the morning. Everyone gathered in front of Urahara store. As soon as they met, Orihime, Sato, and Ishida, who didn't mean what he said, were shocked by Ichigo's appearance. Hey, Kurosaki, is this really okay with you? Before going to Soul Society, would it be better to go to the hospital first? Ichigo, I think Ishida is right this time. What does this time mean? When did I say something unreasonable? Okay, you two, stop being so nagging. Ichigo waved his hand to interrupt the two of them. He looked pale and asked Orihime in a weak tone. I'm sorry Inoue, has your Reiatsu recovered? If so, can you help me treat it again? Oh, of course it's no problem. Orihime quickly activated the double sky barrier, causing an orange barrier to cover Ichigo's body. You are still acting like this even though Inoue is here. Do you want to kill yourself and sneak your soul to Soul Society? Ishida was as talkative as ever. Ichigo just sat on the stool at the door, letting Orihime heal his wounds honestly, and responded smoothly. Don't mention it, it's all the fault of the guy with the clog hat. In the past half-month, he was almost sent to the Soul Society nearly 100 times. If it hadn't been really useful, I would have split his hat and the whole person in two. Chop it into pieces. With his tone full of resentment, combined with his frightening mummy-like appearance wrapped in bandages, anyone with a discerning eye could see what kind of hellish training he had gone through these days. With Ichigo's tenacious vitality, he would have ended up like this. If it had been anyone else, he would have either died within a few days or given up. However, this guy's Reiatsu has indeed improved a lot. Compared to the last time we met, he is completely different. Are all Shinigami so outrageous? If so, what happened to Inoue and Sato? Single quote. Ishida pushed up her glasses, showing no emotion on the surface, but feeling very uncomfortable in her heart. He paid such a high price and gambled on the honor and future career of the Quincy, but in the end, his gains were no different from others, or even worse. This made him feel that he was too incompetent. The fighting spirit that wanted to win a share of glory for the Quincy was severely affected. Hey, is everyone here? At this time, Urahara came pacing. He had a flirtatious smile on his face, but it was hidden by the open folding fan. No, Natsuki hasn't come yet. Did he accidentally fall asleep? Ichigo took off his Shiba uniform shirt and asked doubtfully while undoing the bandages. I think it's more likely that I lost track of time during training. Sato, who has been a sparring partner, has the most say. Orihime also suddenly said. Yes, Miss Yoruichi said a few days ago that she would teach Shajin a very powerful move, and then it went, boom boom boom, all day long, and the ground was shaking. Miss Yoruichi went to check on the situation. I didn't feel energetic the whole day after I came back. It's like I accidentally put ketchup in my lunch box and my classmates ate it. They kept praising me and bought me a piece of bread that I like to eat. Shajin might have fainted from exhaustion without my help in treating him. Quote. So are you happy or unhappy? I could understand it originally, but now I'm worried about Miss Yoruichi's mental state. No, Natsuki doesn't get so tired that she faints from training, but Ms. Yoruichi is often so tired that she snores and can't get out of bed in the morning. Everyone felt helpless at the way she was described. At this moment, a figure descended from the sky lightly on the air. It was Natsuki who was the subject of discussion, and the black cat lying listlessly on his head. Sorry, I was struggling for a long time as to what to bring. In the end, I only brought a knife. Ishida complained while using this opportunity to carefully observe the person who shocked him so much some time ago. At this glance, I found some clues. There is nothing to say about the clothes. Slung across the back is a very common sword bag that holds bamboo swords and wooden knives. You don't have to guess to know that it contains a knife. After all, you don't need it to carry other things. Although the clothes are a bit thin, he only wears a black sports vest and sports shorts, which are standard in the gym. They are comfortable and breathable, but they also show off the considerable muscle outline of the limbs. Is it an illusion? I always feel like I wasn't as strong as I was more than half a month ago. It seemed like I hadn't seen him for 170 days. I don't know if it's because of his tall and straight posture, but also because of his well-developed waist and back core, which supports his entire frame. It seems that he has grown 2 centimeters taller. Coupled with the strong muscles, his whole body has become bigger. His mental outlook is quite different from the last time we met, giving people an unfathomable feeling. His golden eyes are as bright as a tiger and leopard, and he can show strong aggression at any time. The refreshing white short hair is like the mane of a beast, showing strong vitality under the moonlight. Ishida didn't know that this was the result of the Saiyan spirit. She just felt that this senior from the same school was more mature and reliable than before. In addition, although it is not as direct as Ichigo's random overflow of Reiatsu, which brings a sense of oppression to people, the moment his eyes swept across his body, his keen sense of spirituality made him tremble involuntarily. It was like being aware of its existence by some extremely dangerous predator. There is no way to hide or escape. The only hope is for the other party to voluntarily give up hunting. Only Ishida is lucky enough to experience this kind of helplessness in life and death. Others didn't react much. Ichigo is not this material at all. He has never been beaten before, and now he sees anyone who has the courage to go up and chop with a knife. No matter whether the other person is Mr. Sean or Aizen, it doesn't make any difference to him. Instead, he sighed with a bit of envy at Natsuki's fitness results, and then complained a few times. Urahara had lost several kilograms of weight through training, and his blood was almost drained. The remaining Orihime and Sato simply grew accustomed to it because they have been together for a long time. Because Yoruichi said it would be troublesome to bring things from the real world into the Soul Society. Another thing is that too many things can easily get in the way. If there is really something missing, just solve it on the spot. Natsuki said casually. Although he didn't say it clearly, everyone heard the implication. The destination is a new world. It's not that everything is there, but it's not far behind. It's not like I'm a guest anyway, so just take whatever you need. I felt like we were planning a criminal operation. It was so tense and exciting. Orihime looked excited. Looking at the others, the corners of his mouth twitched. It is true that it is a crime, because regardless of whether Miss Kuchiki is saved or not, entering the country illegally is always a bad behavior. Urahara teased. From the moment I made up my mind to save Rukia, I put all this mess behind me. After recovering from his injuries, Ichigo put on his death boss uniform and stood up with Zangetsu on his back. He seemed to be unruly, but in fact he said sonorously and forcefully, whether it's a crime or not, let me, a criminal, rescue other criminals. It's better for bad people to do bad things than to do bad things. It's easier for people to accept good people doing bad things. Everyone, let's go, let's bring Rukia back. After speaking, he took the lead and turned around and stepped into the store. Ishida was still muttering, I didn't go to Soul Society just to save Kuchiki, while following closely behind. Natsuki put his hands in his pockets and walked at the end of the line. He was also mentally prepared not to give up until the goal of this trip was achieved. If you can't get the power of Shinigami, you will give up your body and enter Soul Society as a soul. Anyway, I am alone and have nothing to worry about. Go back to school in this world. Save it. He doesn't love learning that much. Chapter 27 The train blocks the road. Advertise here. A group of people came to the underground space. Urahara summoned the World Traveling Gate, and then warned, this is the World Traveling Gate specially made by me. Everyone will go to Soul Society through it. You said, special, meaning there are also ordinary ones. Natsuki curiously looked at the stone door with 4 pillars wrapped in talismans spliced together. As we all know, Soul Society is a world where souls live. If you want to enter that world, you must become a soul. Urahara explained to everyone. But as long as Mr. Kurosaki can leave the body and move as a soul here, everyone else is still alive. After the soul leaves the body, it will be subject to the chain of cause and effect, so I specially installed a spirit conversion machine on the world transmitting gate. Quote. Convert the vessel that builds all matter in this world into the spirit, that is the main substance that builds the soul. After everyone crosses this door, the body can adapt to the environment of Soul Society. I see, it's such a convenient invention. Ishida stepped forward, seeming to be very interested in the binding spell on the boundary crossing door. Is there a time limit for this conversion mechanism? Natsuki asked thoughtfully. Urahara didn't expect him to ask such a strange question, and couldn't help but be stunned. Everyone also looked at him, obviously taking this question very seriously. After all, it is related to the duration of activities in Soul Society. Although it has not been tested, in theory, if you wish, that state can be maintained forever. Urahara answered truthfully. That's good. If we can't retreat smoothly after rescuing Rukia, we may have to lurk for a long time, which will take a long time. It would be too unfair to end up in this situation. Ichigo felt relieved now. A strange color flashed in Natsuki's eyes. After transforming into a spirit child body, there is no time limit. It means the state is very stable. It is so stable that it may be possible to confuse the fake with the real one, just like those real spirits, refer to their process of becoming Shinigami to obtain the power of Shinigami. You, Ginjo, can obtain the power of the Shinigami in a human body, which is enough to prove that the power of the Shinigami does not exclude humans. Moreover, the way in which the complete technique obtains the medium is similar to the process of shaping Zanpakuto. In Natsuki's view, if a Zanjinjutsu practitioner comes to Soul Society after death and chooses to become a Shinigami, then it will be easy for them to have a Zanpakuto of their own. Not to mention Shikai, Bankai is not a problem either. There is only one reason: professional counterpart. But please don't take it lightly. Although there is no time limit for action in Soul Society, it is different in the world. Urahara put special emphasis on attracting everyone's attention again. There are Julyu and Jutu in the border. They are protective devices to prevent foreign enemies from invading. Since it is an illegal entry, there is no way to restrict it from our side, so we can only rush forward. Quote. 4 minutes, this is the limit that the boundary gate can maintain. If you exceed this time, you will be trapped inside, and sooner or later you will be swallowed up by Julyu and Jutu. As for whether I can arrive at Soul Society in 4 minutes, I can't guarantee that, so it's not too late for everyone to regret it now. Can't you even determine the farthest distance? Natsuki frowned. He had already been targeted by Aizen once. According to the development of the original time and space, Aizen would also tamper with the Jutu. This would cause more tampering due to his own existence, and the risk factor would skyrocket. He must not ignore it. In fact, the broken world has been unstable in the past few days. If it weren't for special circumstances, I would not recommend entering the broken world at this time. Urahara's tone was solemn. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere became tense. When I ran to school in the rain, I never thought I would be late. In fact, I never thought I would be late. Ichigo said suddenly. Mr. Urahara, open the door. There is nothing impassioned, just the determination to succeed or succeed. After glancing at everyone's expressions, Urahara said no more, turned around and thrust his cane into the void in the center of the door. The light swirled and spread, slowly opening the dazzling curtain leading to the unknown world. Natsuki lifted Yoruichi by the scruff of his neck and placed him on the ground. I don't know how long I have to run, so I have to lighten my load as much as possible. As for Yoruichi, there's no need to worry at all. Once she starts running in her cat form, the only thing she can do is chase her. Soon, everyone stepped through the door. A light flashed before his eyes. The world has become a very different place. The ground was covered with straw, as if it was used to make beds for prisoners to keep warm. The sky was turbid and dim, and the walls on both sides were crawling like mudflow waterfalls. The skeletons of unknown creatures stood on the walls, like prison guards. A road continues to the end of the line of sight, and even Natsuki's eyesight cannot see the light emanating from the exit. Stop standing still and run. Seeing that everyone was attracted by this bizarre sight, Natsuki shouted and took the lead in sprinting forward. Apart from a reminder, he had no intention of waiting for anyone. He immediately threw everyone away. It's not that Natsuki is unjust, he has left Yoruichi behind, and with Yoruichi taking care of him, it's not a big problem. On the contrary, if he doesn't hurry up and escape from the boundary, he may trigger the secret plan left by Aizen in advance, and it will also affect other people. All in all, a lot of trouble. Accelerate, keep accelerating. He didn't use the Eye of Annihilation, or any spirit seeds, he just ran on his feet. The mud flow squirmed and stretched out its tentacles towards Natsuki, but could only catch his afterimage. You can see how fast it is. 100 meters in 3 seconds may not be able to block it. The so-called mud flow is Ji-Lu, a high-density gas that exists within boundaries. It specializes in targeting the soul. Once it is stuck, it will be unable to move. If you use spiritual power to break free, it will cause a more terrifying detention. In short, it is to kill them all. Natsuki doesn't use spiritual power because he doesn't want to cause any censorship. That thing is very weird, close to a conceptual existence, and not so easy to destroy. If you are accidentally swallowed, you will fall into vast nothingness and a completely independent timeline. Even Ichigo, who was well prepared in advance and had great luck, almost got stuck and couldn't get out. Natsuki doesn't want to fight him if he doesn't have to. At this time, he noticed a light ahead. Exit arrived. Wrong. Natsuki was keenly aware of the movement of the light. As it gets closer, the bright body burst into view. Not an imaginary exit at all. Instead, a train-like one-eyed creature roared towards them. The light was clearly emitted by his one eye. The ground trembled faintly, and the flow on both sides seemed to be attracted by it, and began to gradually close up, swallowing the road, and crushing him. So you were waiting for me here. Not chasing them from behind, but using them to block the road. It really has sinister intentions. Although I don't know how Aizen changed the trajectory of Kutu, it is obvious that he made such an adjustment because he left the team. Otherwise, it would be too harsh to test Ichigo with this. But, you should also know that you can't kill me with this, right? A trace of doubt flashed in Natsuki's heart, and before he could think about it in detail, a sacred cross symbolizing sacrifice appeared in his eyes. The matter has come to this, there is no need to look forward or backward. That's it. Chapter 28 Aizen. Advertise here. Natsuki's hands emitted a golden light that was purer and clearer than the light emitted by the Kudo, one eye. Compared with when he first understood it, his proficiency in the golden light curse is obviously higher. No matter what, the mobility cannot be restricted. For this reason, Natsuki waved his arms, and golden light shot out one after another like cold arrows, piercing the walls on both sides, and arranged neatly like torches. The violently squirming Juliu became restrained by the golden light and suddenly became more honest. Natsuki cannot understand how Aizen of the original time and space destroyed the Kudu, for the time being, but he also has his own methods. Get down here. Juliu cannot be touched, and Jutu cannot be touched. Is the ground still untouchable? Natsuki raised his foot and stomped on the ground hard. As soon as the golden light appeared, along with the roar, the ground actually cracked. A small crack extended forward and finally became wider and wider, causing a certain section of the road to collapse and fall into an endless black cavity. There is no road, but Jutu continues to move forward without paying attention. Natsuki just stood by and watched it plunge into the abyss and disappear into the darkness. Then, jump forward, fall across the road. Although this pit is huge, it can't help Ichigo and the others. What's more, the most dangerous detention has been resolved and will not happen again for at least 7 days. Natsuki continued on his way. He would never feel at ease until he left here. After a while, I heard a faint exclamation from behind. I think it was Ichigo and the others who saw the cut-off road. Natsuki didn't pay much attention because he already saw the exit. Keep your mind steady and be alert. But nothing happened until he passed through the exit. What on earth is Aizen thinking? Although it deviated from the original plan, judging from the results, the goal was achieved. A secret research laboratory somewhere in Seraiti. Aizen was covered in darkness and stood in front of the monitor, watching everything that happened in the world. Captain Aizen values him very much. Ichimaru Jin sat in front of the computer with a casual attitude. Yes, because according to my judgment, he is now capable of taking out Hogyoku from Rukia Kuchiki's body before I can. Aizen smiled and said something shocking. Ichimaru Jin stopped moving, obviously shocked. Although I don't mind giving Kurosaki Ichigo some time and letting him grow, the prerequisite is that the situation will not get out of control, so I will exclude factors that may cause the failure of my plan. I think this is not difficult to understand. Aizen continued to add, quote, Then why not just kill him? Although that human seems to have become much stronger after not seeing him for a while, but if it is you, Captain Aizen, if you want to kill him, wouldn't there be as many ways as you can to kill him? Ichimaru Jin probed vaguely, because I still have some doubts about his existence. Aizen is concise and to the point. Ichimaru Jin knew that the topic ended here, and if he continued to ask questions, he would inevitably touch on Aizen's secret, which could not be figured out in a few words. Contrary to his subordinates who kept silent, Aizen was very talkative and looked at the sky door shown on the monitor, which had been there for several minutes. But no one ever showed up. It wasn't until it was about to close that 3 or 5 figures ran out in embarrassment. It was Ichigo and others. Seeing this, Aizen said leisurely. Then again, I really didn't expect that there are so many research results on the disconnection in the Great Spirit Book corridor. It can even control the flow and disruption of the disconnection, manipulate the time density in it, and confuse the timeline between the present world and Soul Society. I originally wanted to let Jutu trap him for about 10 days and a half, but he used the Wangsun technique to control the boundary in turn and solve the Jutu, causing our side to temporarily lost control of the break. However, the appearance of Kudu would have caused a shift in the timeline. He was walking on the path that Kudu had traveled. Due to his ability, all the influence was concentrated on him alone. On the other hand, Kurosaki Ichigo and his team came to Soul Society smoothly, which was something I didn't expect. Ichimaru Jin tilted his chin, his narrow eyes narrowed together in an evil and frivolous manner, as if his curiosity was aroused, and he curled up the corners of his mouth. Obviously he was the first to come out, but now he is nowhere to be seen. So, Captain Aizen, where is he now? The eyes behind Aizen's glasses were filled with interest. The time error caused by being chased by the judgment is usually measured in hundreds of years. Originally, Urahara Kazuki's technology can shorten the error to a few days. But because he hit it by mistake and absorbed all the effects of Jutu, it is unknown at what point in time he will appear in Soul Society after passing through that door. Maybe it will appear next moment, or maybe thousands of years later. There is still a possibility that he is already in Soul Society. Is it really okay? If you appear in Soul Society or the present world with more than 100 years of time on your back, your body won't be able to bear it, right? Ichimaru Jin points out a key point. The time density of the world is surprisingly high. If you stay in it for 2,000 years, only 1 year will pass outside. No one may believe it, but Jutu and Julyu actually exist to protect the soul. To put it simply, it has a dissuasive effect. Prevent anyone from taking advantage of this rule to commit suicide. It's not just seeking death. The longer you stay in the separation, the body will return to its original state when you finally leave the separation, and this process will cause the body to die due to overwhelm. Indeed, your worries are reasonable, but don't underestimate him too much. He may die, but he will never die for this reason. After saying that, Aizen turned around and walked straight to the exit. Come on, Silver, it's time to greet the guests. Chapter 29. Is this the scene of a 1,000-year bloody battle? Advertise here. In the night sky, stars are like rain. This was the first sight Natsuki saw. And then, use the air as your foothold and stand in midair to overlook the whole place. You can have a panoramic view of the beautiful Seraiti. After all, they set off in the early morning, and it was night time here in Soul Society. Natsuki was not surprised, but he couldn't understand the movement coming from Seraiti. The so-called Reiatsu is the vibration produced when the soul releases Reiatsu. The concentration of souls in Soul Society far exceeds that of the real world. Because of this, Natsuki is like a duck in water, and his perception has greatly increased, and Seraiti has also brought under control more than a dozen areas in the surrounding area. The word illusion cannot appear in his dictionary. That's why he couldn't understand. Why are there so many violent reactions in Seraiti? Even with the naked eye, you can see the fire and smoke rising into the sky. Glowing and colorful, each ray of light can destroy a building. The residents of Rukongai had already begun to flee, moving towards more remote and dangerous outlying areas. This was something that was unimaginable in his time. Because the area around Seraiti is the most secure and safe place. Who would run to those chaotic areas in the back just to survive? However, the fact happened right under Natsuki's nose. Because of a time error, I came to the 1,000-year bloody war period more than a year later. No wonder Natsuki thinks so. Because what else would a war of this scale be but a 1,000-year bloody battle? War raged throughout the Seraiti. It was more serious than any unrest he could remember. It seemed like everything was going to be set on fire. The cold murderous intent surged in like a tsunami. It is not aimed at anyone, but to destroy the order of the entire world, to reverse the world, to dig out the sins of Soul Society, and to bring down the gods from above. The number of participants is measured in thousands. The sound of fighting was so shocking that it could be heard clearly even from such a distance. At least half of them have similar properties to Ishida's Reiatsu. It is Reiatsu who belongs to the Quincy. Natsuki took a deep breath, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Regardless of whether he was late or not, it didn't stop him from getting involved. Anyway, his goal was to seal the state. Now that the war situation is chaotic, it is time to fish in troubled waters. As for Aizen, I'll settle the score with him later. After making his decision, he flew directly in the direction of Spiritual Arts Academy. Although the pure soul wall has fallen, the murderous stone and the soul shielding membrane are useless in front of Natsuki's golden light curse. A hole was ripped open before he was reduced to dust. Before setting off, Yoruichi told the location of the Spiritual Arts Academy. However, neither she nor Urahara knew exactly where the sealed state was placed. Sealed states are issued as soon as you enter the Spiritual Arts Academy, so there is no need to find out where the sealed states come from and where more sealed states are stored. Natsuki had no choice but to find it on his own. Relying on extremely fast maneuverability, he successfully reached his destination without much contact with others. The Spiritual Arts Academy, which nurtures numerous students, is supposed to be the least threatening institutional facility, but due to its special nature, it has become a priority target for destruction. Natsuki was horrified by the sight of corpses on the ground. It's not that I'm afraid, but I can't keep a normal mind no matter what when I see some young boys and girls who might still be in elementary school or middle school in this world die tragically in front of my eyes. The moment he stepped onto the broken and blood-stained stairs and entered the building, an arrow of light came towards him. Natsuki didn't hide or evade, and even focused all his attention on observing the person who sneaked up on him. It was a group of Quincy wearing white uniforms and gas masks. Probably a small team. The first time he came to his judgment, Natsuki took a step forward and smashed the light arrow into pieces, at least in the eyes of the holy soldier. The next second, the vision of all Quincy fell into darkness. Their heads were blown off by Natsuki's punch. Maybe not even touched. It exploded just by the fist pressure. I think Muguruma Kensai will feel very involved when he sees it. Strictly speaking, this is Natsuki's first time killing someone. But there was no fluctuation in his heart. Without even a glance, he walked straight ahead. After walking a few steps, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at a man lying on the corridor. Judging from his appearance, he should be a teacher at the Spiritual Arts Academy. Because of this, he was injured much more seriously than the students. It was so serious that Natsuki almost didn't notice that he still had a breath left. Team leader. The man made a weak sound. Natsuki stepped forward and squatted down, and asked directly, "Tell me, where is the sealed state?" Quote. The man stared at him for a while, his dim gaze making people feel as if he was blind. His fingers pointed to the ground tremblingly, and he drew a few bright red marks on the ground. Natsuki could tell, he was telling him how to go. Finished the last stroke. The man's arms dropped, dead. Quote. Killing those people can be regarded as a partial revenge for you. If I meet other people next, I will continue to take action. Natsuki spoke calmly to the corpse. Then, he punched the ground hard. Not to vent your anger, but to reach the next level of space as quickly as possible. Deep in the dark corridor, there is a secret place where the sealed state is stored. Whenever a new student enrolls, a batch will be taken out and temporarily loaned to the new student. It will not truly belong to that new student until he graduates and joins the team in sealed state. In Natsuki's eyes, that room was completely an underground prison that never saw the light of day, where humanoid creatures called sealed states were imprisoned. He used the characteristics of the Eye of Annihilation to destroy the sealing spell on the door. When he stepped inside, he saw a large number of black humanoid objects standing in the shadows, like corpses. Hearing the noise, the sealed states raised their heads and looked at Natsuki with eyes shaped like a mouth with teeth. There was no resistance. They lined up obediently, waiting to be led out. It's as if he has experienced it countless times. Natsuki took a deep breath. If those new students saw such a scene, they might not desire Zanpakuto. With their immature minds, when they think that the knife they hold in their hands is transformed from such an infiltrating creature, they will definitely be filled with resentment, so there is no talk of sword zen. But Natsuki doesn't care about that. He took off his sword bag and took out the Zanpakuto that Mei-Gen had left behind after his death. This knife is very special. It is Zanpakuto who once fused with his master. According to the information given in the prompt bar, Natsuki inserted the knife upside down into the center of the room, then stepped back a few steps, grabbed a sealed state and threw it over, then bombarded the sealed state with heat rays to melt it. There is no need for the golden light spell. In Soul Society, where the concentration of spirit particles is so high, the efficiency of the Annihilation Eye in absorbing spirit particles to strengthen the body's ability has increased by more than double or 10 times. Heat Ray was once regarded by Natsuki as his trump card, but now it can be unleashed continuously until his stamina is exhausted and Reiatsu is exhausted. He somewhat understood why the Quincy was so eager to capture Soul Society. Chapter 30. When did I become the captain of the 2nd Division? Sealed State. Known as the strongest Zanpakuto with unlimited development potential. In this way, one after another, they were killed by Natsuki in the most cruel way. There is no blood in their bodies. There are no bones, internal organs and other organs. It looks exactly like a large clay figure, cut and melted from head to toe by the beam of the heat ray, into a black liquid substance that resembles petroleum. Natsuki felt Shinigami's Reiatsu from it. Sealed state is made from the soul of Shinigami. No matter where Nigea Wang Yu got so many materials, the sealed state produced by him is undoubtedly a great invention. Because if you want to make a spirit become a Shinigami, the easiest way is to directly put the power of Shinigami into his hands. As for what it is shaped into, it varies from person to person. Natsuki doesn't resonate with these sealed states. Maybe he should learn from others, pick one at random and polish it day and night, injecting the essence of his own soul. But before that, he needs a Zanpakuto that can fully carry its own power. Ginjo uses his Zangenjutsu medium as Zanpakuto. Natsuki can't learn it. So I can only use Ichigo's method. Forged knife. Inject your own strength into the process of forging the knife to perfectly fit yourself. Otherwise, even if you have the power of Shinigami, it will just be an additional fighting method, integrated with the multiple powers envisioned by Natsuki. Using the Shinigami technique is to use the power of Shinigami, and using the power of Shinigami is to use the Shinigami technique. The results are completely different. As each sealed state is melted, the temperature in the room is getting higher and higher. Natsuki has been careful, but the burning phenomenon is inevitable. Ceiling, floor, walls. There are signs of burning. Especially the ground. The temperature of the melted liquid sealed state was extremely high, and the ground was melted and gradually sunk. After all, Soul Society itself is built from souls. Heat ray can ignite spirit seeds. The result was that the entire room was filled with blazing fire and turned into an oven. If Natsuki hadn't been protected by the golden light curse, he wouldn't have been able to withstand the heat and flames. But even so, his forehead was still covered with sweat. It's hard to tell whether it's due to fatigue caused by exerting too much force, or whether it's due to the loss of a lot of soul essence. I'm afraid the two are inseparable. Natsuki already understood the purpose of the prompt bar. Knife forging itself is a rougher way than knife zen, a way of writing the essence of the soul and injecting one's own ideas and spirit. Especially the knife forged by myself. Especially the sword that he forged with the power of the Fushin technique. Heat ray will destroy the spirit child structure, use the spirit child as fuel, and burn it up. The reason why multiple sealed states are needed is not because of how huge a Zanpakuto is to be forged, but simply used as consumables. The remaining spiritual substance that was not evaporated immediately merged with the Zanpakuto left behind by the plum needle. The latter are more receptive to foreign things. To put it simply, it means that you have a foundation of fusion experience, so it will be smoother to fuse other Shinigami souls. It can only be said that the prompt bar has arranged everything clearly. As long as you follow the instructions, you will definitely succeed. It is more like the ability of the law of cause and effect than the ability of the law of cause and effect. Time passes slowly. Knife forging enters the final stage. The room was empty. Only a long, tombstone-like black rock was left standing in the pit in the center of the room. Natsuki stepped on the fire and walked to the rock. The right hand wrapped in the golden light spell, shattered the solidified shell and sank into it. To grab hold of something and pull hard. Boom. Golden light overflows. The terrifying Reiatsu rolled up a fire that instantly overwhelmed the entire room. The dilapidated ruins of the Spiritual Arts Academy were completely razed to the ground, and it would be difficult for anyone to recognize the appearance of this place. Natsuki's body was filled with heat, and the Reiatsu flowed from Zanpakuto into his arms, as if it was being run in and adjusted, giving him a feeling of burning fire. Wisps of white smoke rose from the body surface. The blood rushes faster than before. The skin becomes flushed. Natsuki couldn't tell whether this was time backlash or a resonance with Zanpakuto that was too strong. Wait until the situation subsides and your body bones cool down. Glancing out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that his skin had turned into Yoruichi's wheat color. Come on, I've inherited another, unique skill, from my master. Natsuki didn't take it seriously. Anyway, he was not born with this kind of skin color, and he would probably return to his original color in a short time. Compared with this, he cared more about the Zanpakuto in his hand. Looking away, a brand new Zanpakuto came into view. A cross-shaped brass sword with an orange scabbard. It has the beauty of both a Western sword and a samurai sword. Natsuki put his hand on the scabbard and looked at it contentedly. This is the Zanpakuto that I worked so hard to create. From now on, he is also considered a Shinigami. Although it will definitely not be recognized by Gote 13, but who cares, as long as you have the power, why care too much about other people's opinions? At this time, many people appeared around. It must have been attracted by the movement just now. After all, it is during a war, and support is important. Especially those who can make such a big noise, whether they are friendly forces or enemies, must be taken seriously. Natsuki looked around and saw that the people coming were all Shinigami wearing Death Boss costumes. Before he could say anything, a gray-faced girl roughly pushed through the crowd and rushed over. Her expression was like that of a lost child who had found his parents, and he was so excited that tears were about to flow out. Captain, I finally found you. Where have you been? The enemy troops broke into our team building. The vice captain asked me to look for you, but I couldn't find you anywhere. The vice captain had to lead other officers to fight. I retreated at this time, Our second division team will almost have all the chief officers. Quote. Quote. Natsuki showed a blank expression when he heard her crying. When did you become the captain of Gote 13? And it's the second team. Chapter 31 Time and Space Cycle. Advertise here. Looking at the girl with pear blossoms and rain, Natsuki had a complicated expression. It's not about sympathy or pity, but because familiar words appeared before my eyes. The captain-level soul cannot be degraded into ordinary ownerless souls after passing away. It should have fallen into hell during the ritual, but because of the traces you left thousands of years ago, the residual Reiatsu with similar properties attracted it. Finally drifting to the present world close black lens bracket. After wandering for 1,000 years, I finally waited for you to appear and become one with you. Accepting this power, you also walked on the deviated timeline and came to Seraiti thousands of years ago. Aizen thought the plan had an accident, but little did he know that this was the future you chose for yourself. Because you with the prompt bar are the only reference point, history will change because of you, and the world will automatically correct itself. Instead of destroying your body, you will replace the soul. From this moment on, you will create your own past life and continue your current life with your own hands. Natsuki is not stupid. Although the description on the prompt bar was clumsy, he still understood it. Natsuki still remembers that on the day of his awakening, the prompt bar said that there was powerful power deep inside his body, and the Soul King fragment was just one of them. Later, it was hinted that he is very destined to the power of Shinigami, and as long as he has that heart, he will definitely get what he wants. Natsuki thought it was the prompt bar that was working, but now it seems that's not necessarily the case. As early as when he was born, he had been fused with the spirit son of a powerful Shinigami who had passed away. If you encounter a virtual day, you can have a sealed state in your hand. There is a high probability that the power of Shinigami will be awakened instead of the full expression technique. However, even though it was not manifested at that time, it does not mean that it does not exist. As the prompt column says, there must be a cause if there is an effect, and it did not come to the door for no reason. The results have already appeared. What is happening now is the cause. The original owner of the Reiatsu I fused should be the captain of the first generation Gote 13 2nd Division, Yoruichi's ancestor, Shihun Seni. Because of this, the nature of my Reiatsu is somewhat similar to his. When I came to this era, I was bound to leave footprints. These footprints led to the death of Shihun Seni in this battle. The spirit son was attracted and chased to Karakura Town in the present world, wandering for 1,000 years until I crossed over. Merge with me. But in fact, I have replaced his existence since I traveled through time, but it will not take effect until I come to this era. Natsuki gasped inwardly. When other people travel through time, they replace so-and-so from the very beginning. It's better for you. Swim upstream from the future, intercept the past, and then lay the groundwork for what will happen in the future. This is much more damaging than changing the future. Have you not seen that some powerful fantasy powers can easily wipe out the opponent's past body across time and space? This shows that this trick is really useful. In addition, if you apply it to yourself, it is not a bad idea. For example, the normal timeline is 1, 2 and 3 that develop well. But when it was the turn of 3, he suddenly turned around and connected with 1, and the line turned into a circle. That's all. But 3 felt that it should not be followed by 1, so it was changed to 4, and the 2 together became 5. And the ghost 3 doubled and became 6. It develops 2 steps faster than normal out of thin air. It is the kind that can easily roll up a huge snowball by mobilizing the whole body, and it takes effect immediately. No wonder, the prompt bar will say that this is the future he chose for himself. It's like running into the past, finding someone to invest in, snatching him away, and leaving all the property to your future self. But isn't your future self the same as your current self? So, what will happen then? Natsuki is still unknown. But it shouldn't be anything bad. After all, Ichigo has been in a similar situation. He was swallowed by the Kutu, and then was rescued inexplicably. I didn't see who it was at the time, but later I took the initiative to run into the Kutu, and saw another one of my own and saved him. Then I realized after hearing what Urahara said, it turns out that the person who saved him in the first place was his future self. Natsuki doesn't know about others, but in short, he will not sit around and have trouble with himself. As long as we do not deviate from the fate of Shihun 1,000 days, we will not break this circle. It is very simple to do this, because Shihun 1,000 days will die tonight. All I need to do is this, and what to do beyond that will be up to me. Create your own past life, with your own hands and plant causes for future results. If you plant more causes, will it produce more results? Natsuki felt anxious. What he is doing now is actually to fill in the gaps in his resume for himself who traveled to this world out of thin air. You can't exaggerate to the point of destroying your history, just like you can't write on your resume what bad things you did in the past, so how can you benefit yourself? This degree is still very easy to control. It's nothing more than earning more and earning less. Natsuki suspects that there is a hint bar behind this time and space cycle, in order to give him benefits in disguise, and this game of chess lasts for 16 years. Even Aizen was taken advantage of. But even so, Natsuki still took a note of him. He even considered leaving a prophetic ancestral message to the Shihun family. If he couldn't catch up, he would ask old man Sean to hide Rukia so that no one could find her. Many thoughts flashed through my mind. Natsuki calmed down and asked the girl, "What's your name?" Quote. Have you even forgotten who I am? I just fought against an enemy that can make people lose their memory, and I was a little affected. I am B. Leonwa from the 5th seat of the 2nd Division. The girl has no doubt that he is there. Perhaps she was frightened by the sacrifice of too many companions, so she pinned all her hopes on Natsuki without even thinking that she would be a fake. Leonwa, I understand, you can retreat. Without thinking about the relationship between the surname, B, and the future Sui Feng, Natsuki patted her shoulder, grabbed the long-sheathed sword, and turned around and waved it like a flag. Reiatsu exploded. A storm was set off and all the incoming light arrows were defeated. A group of Quincy in white military uniforms appeared on the opposite side of the pit. It was these people who launched the sneak attack. However, they did not notice that a subtle and sharp golden light was mixed in the storm. When he was discovered, the leader's arrogant expression froze, his pupils tightened, and he turned his head. The golden light flying needle grazed his cheek and disappeared into the eyebrows of his subordinates standing behind him. The Quincy died on the spot. The leader didn't react much at first. After a few seconds, a wound appeared on his face, and blood slowly seeped out, making his delicate and handsome face look a little more ferocious. Interesting. Chapter 32. What a coincidence, we are all second in command. Advertise here. Hubert never even glanced at his dead subordinates. His attention was entirely on Natsuki. I knew that by deliberately letting a little mouse go and beating her with fear, she would lead me to find more mice and gain more military exploits. Hubert seemed to be satisfied with his greed and vision, and deliberately stretched out his tongue to lick the blood drops flowing down. Natsuki could see that behind his seemingly calm and rational commander's demeanor there was a murderous heart. Do you think I don't know that you are catching up? B. Leonwa looked angry. The fact that a group of people from the other side came here in a swagger can only mean that the Shinigami who tried to hinder them were completely dead. She didn't think that she and others were too weak. Gotei 13, which has just transformed from a killer group, has close relationships among its teams, extremely high cohesion, and a tenacious will to fight. It is an ironclad force. Although the opponent is not weak, the main thing is that there is another strong person holding the battle. If the high-end combat power is unbalanced, there is no reason to be invincible. It would have been a different outcome if the captain had been present. So after knowing that the opponent was catching up, Feng Leonwa was not worried at all, because she believed that as long as she found the captain, she could deal with this group of enemy troops. Captain, this is the man who led the team to capture the team building. The weapons he uses are swords and bows. He likes to launch strong attacks from the front, and then use bows to sneak attack at close range. In addition, he has strong wrist strength, defensive power, and high speed. Come on, the vice captain used Kido to attack and it was also cracked. It is suspected that he has the ability to target Kido. B. Lotus spoke very quickly. Balabala said a lot. From combat methods to abilities to style characteristics. This is all information obtained by comrades who took the initiative to sacrifice their lives even though they knew they were outmatched. Even her main purpose of living is just to deliver information. I understand, take those people away and find a safe place to hide. Natsuki nodded. This information was very useful. He knew the Quincy very well, but the Quincy from thousands of years ago were using some backward technology that he didn't understand. If his judgment was wrong, the consequences might be much more serious than being caught off guard. B. Lotus Flower immediately executed the order. Hubert sneered and raised his chin, and the subordinates around him chased after him. Who allowed you to leave my sight? Natsuki's voice was colder than the night wind. And his gaze was hotter than the flames of war. The ruby beam tore through the night, sweeping away any Quincy who dared to step forward. It's like shooting ants with a laser. There is no escape, no avoidance. There is no other option but to disappear into ashes. The explosive flames dyed half of the sky red, illuminating the faces of Natsuki and Hubert. The former is calm, the latter is gloomy. The heat from the surroundings was frozen by the murderous ore they released. Very good, you are qualified to let me tell you your name. Hubert slowly drew out the saber from his waist, and Reiatsu ascended, easily crossing the minimum threshold for the captain to practice Bankai. I am Hubert, the deputy commander of His Majesty Yuacha's 1st Ace Unit, Knights of the Star Cross. Some impression. If I remember correctly, he was summoned by Old Man Sean using Bankai to serve as a soldier. In addition, he lived in the memories of others. Natsuki wrote lightly. What a coincidence. You are the deputy captain and I am the captain of the 2nd Division. We are both second in command. Quote. Hubert's expression turned even worse. Second in command. He is indeed the second in command of the Knights of the Star Cross. He has a high status and is respected by thousands of people. But if possible, he would like to become His Majesty Yuacha's deputy and the head of the Knights of the Star Cross. Kick that young boy from the position of leader. This crusade against Soul Society is an opportunity. No matter how much His Majesty favors that young boy, as long as he achieves more impressive results than the other party, he can legitimately ask His Majesty for the position of head of the regiment. So no matter whether the other party angered him or not, he would not let go of the big fish in front of him. I will cut off your head and present it to His Majesty Yoruichi in the feather-woven fabric of your squadron. Swing the knife. It was still waving half a second ago. Half a second later, the blade almost hit Natsuki's throat. Is this the flying kick? It's indeed fast enough. It's not only fast, but also very smooth. Now I understand why Ishida looks down on Shunpo. Ping. The sound of gold and iron clashing sounded. A materialized golden light appeared on Natsuki's neck, and the blade even sparked when it struck. What? Hubert was shocked. In addition to turning this golden light into a flowing arrow, can it also be used for defense? But even if this is the case, it doesn't mean that he can't be killed even if he uses the blood-moving equipment, right? At this time, Natsuki's whip leg wrapped in golden light hit Schubert's abdomen. Although Hubert immediately switched to the static blood equipment to reduce the damage, he was still carried by this unimaginable brute force and flew backwards, hitting the slope on the edge of the pit like a cannonball, and rolled over repeatedly. After several laps, he flew out of the pothole. He finally managed to stop himself in midair, but Natsuki appeared behind Hubert at a faster speed. The blade is approaching, but it stopped abruptly. Natsuki grabbed his wrist and used his 5 fingers to grasp it as firmly as an eagle's talons. If the static blood suit hadn't been on, Hubert's wrist joint would have been crushed to pieces. Not caring at all about the unusually tricky angle, the arrow of light hit the door directly in front of him. Natsuki grabbed Hubert's sword-holding hand and swung it away again. Boom. The ground shook. It was like a sandbag falling to the ground, splashing dust more than 10 meters high. Natsuki has not turned on the Eye of Annihilation for a long time, but his basic physical fitness is not low. Coupled with environmental factors and the Spirit Sun, sent by Hubert, combined with the Golden Light Curse. Spending dozens of minutes absorbing atmospheric spirit particles in this world will only have this effect. Don't wait until the smoke clears. Hundreds of light arrows were fierce, as if they were sweeping in with anger. Natsuki smiled, but didn't seem to smile. The continuous rain of light engulfed his figure. Hubert was on the ground with a bruised head and blood, breathing heavily, and was in a miserable state. Just as he was about to sarcastically vent a few words, he saw the rain of light dissipate and turn into countless black and white spirits. The light and shadow intertwined and merged into Natsuki's eyes. Spirit absorption. Hubert's expression became very exciting. For the Quincy who packaged souls into weapons, nothing was more troublesome than this ability. Chapter 33 Natsuki's Zanpakuto. Advertise here. Contrary to Hubert, Natsuki has an excellent fighting experience. Thanks to your opponent, his physical abilities reached an unprecedented level. Even if Yami is killed, he dares to fight with him. I really like fighting with Quincy. If my opponent is Shinigami, I'll have to wait a long time, but Quincy's moves are all replenishing my nutrition. From today on, Hollow is no longer the Quincy's natural enemy, I am. Faced with Natsuki's emotion that sounded arrogant and unchanged, Hubert almost exploded with anger. Holding the knife in his hand tightly, a cold look appeared on his face covered in dust, blood and sweat. Isn't it just about absorbing spirit children? Do you think you can defeat me with this? You are wrong. Absorbing and manipulating spirit children is the patent of Quincy. I will let you suffer the consequences of provocation in the field where Quincy is best. That's enough. As he spoke, he pulled off the gloves from both hands with his teeth. Boom. A beam of light shot into the sky. Hubert was shrouded in light, and the Reiatsu on his body increased rapidly. Even if the Quincy is not good at Reiatsu, his Reiatsu still reaches an extremely terrifying level, and this is not caused by the seal. Instead, with the place where he stood as the center, all the surrounding matter was gradually decomposing, turning into pure spiritual particles that gathered in his body. That's right, it's the same as Natsuki's Annihilation Eye. Break down and then absorb. This pair of spirit scattering gloves was personally gifted by His Majesty. I have been wearing them for a whole year for this battle. Just wearing them can greatly train my abilities as a Quincy. I don't plan to take it off until I become strong enough to render it useless, because the moment I take it off, it means I have to respond to His Majesty's expectations of me no matter what. That should have been the most sacred battle, a battle that can be called a milestone. Hubert gritted his teeth, like a devouring beast. There is no milestone, but I can engrave these words of yours on your tombstone. Natsuki fell to the ground, tit for tat. You're afraid you'll never have this opportunity. The light dissipated and seemed to subside. But Hubert's gradually swollen and deformed body tells that this is not that simple. Natsuki narrowed her eyes. The scattered spirit gloves can forcibly spread the spirit seeds, but the Quincy relies on the concentration of spirit particles to fight. Wearing the scattered spirit gloves to collect spirit particles is 100 times more difficult than usual. But if it can be done, the basic skill of gathering spirit seeds will improve by leaps and bounds. Once it is taken off, it will be difficult to adapt to it, and it will be counterattacked by the excessive concentration of spirit seeds, and eventually lose the ability of the Quincy. It is worth mentioning that the superpower brought by taking off the soul scattering gloves will evolve into the Quincy Complete Holy Body in the distant future. Hubert wore soul dispersing gloves on both hands. He also claimed to have worn it for a year. I'm afraid it's not to hone the concentration of spiritual beings, but to swallow more spiritual beings in one breath and mutate the body when the gloves are taken off. While Natsuki was thinking, Hubert attacked him. The exaggerated and bloated muscles burst out of the uniform, and the whole person was like a mountain of flesh. It came in an instant in an opposite light and smooth way. The airflow alone could blow a large living person away. The saber in his hand also became rough and huge due to the reconstruction of the Spirit Sun, adapting to the mutated body. Die. Natsuki wanted to use the golden light spell to resist, but gave up as soon as the idea came up. No contact is fine. If there is physical contact, even the golden light spell may be broken down into spirit particles and absorbed by the opponent's holy slave. Holy slave, Linksey's absolute subordinate. The ultimate of soul collection. Hubert, who took off the spirit dispersing gloves, naturally reached this state, so he could decompose matter into pure spirit particles. I see. The key lies in the blood suit. Natsuki avoided the knife, which was larger than a guillotine, and caught the fleeting integrated lines on the opponent's wrist and shoulder from the corner of his eye. The body expands, and the blood vessels also expand and become denser. It is not difficult to guess what will happen when the spirit is injected and the blood pack is activated. The mutated body overloads the blood equipment, and even using two different blood equipment at the same time is not completely impossible. The attack is almost useless against Hubert. The spirit is absorbed and the impact is offset by the blood armor. On the other hand, Hubert can run rampant and ravage the enemy with terrible destructive power. It's like I'm fighting with myself. Natsuki is very familiar with this strategy. Isn't that what I do with the Eye of Annihilation? Because of this, he became more and more calm. No matter how fierce the opponent's attack was, they couldn't touch even a single finger of his. What's wrong? Don't you try to resist with that golden keto. Where did your previous calmness go? Hubert chased and fought fiercely, while not forgetting to ridicule. The area of 100 meters was like being bombarded by missiles one after another. A casual blow caused the earth to surge and potholes appeared. He alone exerted a terrifying power comparable to hundreds of thousands of people. The words just fell. There was a bang sound. Natsuki punched him in the face. The beating made Hubert's face distorted, and he flew out, hitting several houses and buildings one after another, and flattened the entire street. I'm waiting for strengthening. What are you waiting for? Natsuki moved his wrist joint and pulled out the Zanpakuto. Burn my remaining body, and I will be the same as Brahma. Spark. This action was accompanied by words of liberation. Burns and melts from the tip of the knife. In an instant, even the blade and handle were burned cleanly, leaving nothing behind. Only Natsuki is surrounded by lingering stardust ashes. It's like being in a raging fire. Hubert climbed out of the ruins and saw this scene, and an alarm bell sounded in his heart. He did not feel that the other party was wasting spiritual energy on useless efforts. At this moment, Natsuki suddenly became violent and rushed towards him to fight hand to hand. Hubert suffered a heavy blow to the abdomen, and the static blood suit was a little overwhelmed. He didn't have time to think too much, and he roared and launched a counterattack. No one used their souls to attack the other party. They all used spirit seeds to strengthen their bodies. This resulted in the two men fighting in an extremely rough manner, just beating each other. Hubert was quite confident in his slicing skills and felt that using weapons to deal with unarmed enemies was a wise move, but this idea was shattered after meeting Natsuki. Yes, Natsuki couldn't withstand such a heavy blow without using the golden light curse, but similarly, if he had to dodge it wholeheartedly, he wouldn't be hit. On the contrary, Hubert was bullied forward by him. The distance was too short and the knife was too big and too long, making it inconvenient. Natsuki used this as a breakthrough. The explosive heart liberation fist, S characteristic of using instinct to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages is fully displayed. Each of his strikes contained killing intent, specializing in the vital points of the human body and the weak points of blood equipment. Hubert could barely fight Natsuki at first, but as Natsuki's Annihilation Eye was activated for longer and longer, his physical abilities continued to rise, gradually overpowering Hubert. The more you fight, the stronger you become, and the more you fight, the braver you become. This discovery horrified Hubert. Doesn't this guy have a limit? Unwilling to believe it, and even less willing to accept the reality, he decided to put more spiritual power into the blood-moving suit. It didn't matter if he was injured, he could just use the spiritual thread of the chaotic suit to control the body. Otherwise, it would be impossible to turn the tide of the war around. The speed of swinging the knife suddenly increased. Natsuki didn't seem to react. Hubert was overjoyed. But the next moment, Natsuki punched him, shattering his full blow and saber into pieces, then turned and roundhouse kicked him, hitting him in the face. Ripples of air bloomed on Hubert's face, and his whole body flew backwards like a piece of rag. Natsuki's own fist was injured. The middle finger was shattered and the entire palm was almost cut open. But what oozed out from the wound was not blood, but golden flames, which burned the wound completely and the fingers grew back. In other words, the injury no longer exists. Hateful. How could such a thing happen? I don't deserve to die here. I haven't surpassed Haschwalth. Help, Your Majesty. Hubert lost half of his teeth. Everything he said was leaking. He glared at Natsuki, fear growing in him. This person's Zanpakuto ability seems to be related to healing. How can we fight this? It was already getting stronger and had the ability to heal itself. He also wants to rely on the disguised puppet to exchange injuries with the opponent and wear him down. It's simply a fantasy. Don't even think about running. Natsuki's eyes seemed to be able to see right into his heart. I didn't see what you did in the second division team building, but as long as I know that you killed my nominal subordinate, then I will definitely beat you to death here. Don't worry, I won't delay you for too long. Because what you said before was wrong. It was not me provoking you in the field you are good at, but you, self-righteously stepping into the field I am best at. Every step he took was like a countdown to Hubert's death. The deputy leader of the Star-Crossed Knights had a distorted face and roared with despair. I don't believe you really have immortality. The shrill sound spread far away, and many people stopped fighting for a while. But soon, the sound stopped abruptly. I could only feel the violent Reiatsu fluctuations, as if I was in a final fight of life and death. One of these, Reiatsu, has become weaker over time. Entering the trough in a slow, steady and irreversible way, and then, disappearing. The other Reiatsu is still in the sky, making people think that its owner is imitating the sun, relying on temperature and hunger to torture the enemy to death. Chapter 34 The decisive battle is coming. Advertise here. Team leader. When B. Leonwa returned to the battlefield, she was immediately shocked by the sight in front of her. Spiritual Arts Academy no longer exists. It's an exaggeration to say it's a ruin, but it's just a wasteland of scorched earth, as pitted as the surface of the moon. A mountain of meat more than 3 meters high was piled up there, which was the most eye-catching. The blood was like blooming buds, splashing all over the ground. Perhaps because he didn't want the blood to stain the soles of his shoes, Natsuki held the knife and sat on the mountain of meat very casually. The clothes were much torn and there was a lot of sweat. Although there were no obvious injuries, the Reiatsu Madara was in a mess. Those are all traces left over from the battle, like dust and blood stains. For those with spiritual awareness, this is the smell of gunsmoke. The gunpowder smoke on Natsuki's body was even scarier than real gunpowder, making people tremble with fear, silently expressing the power of the person being killed. However, Natsuki looked calm, which made people feel even more uneasy, as if he would go on a murderous rampage at the next moment, but without the slightest hint of fireworks, just as normal as drinking water and eating. Not only was B. Leonwa not afraid, but she admired such a captain more and more. Captain, has the opponent escaped? Isn't this what it is? Natsuki took the scabbard and poked it down. B. Lotus Flower took a closer look and recognized the true form of this mountain of flesh. Who else could it be but that sissy bastard? It looked like a puddle of mud and she almost didn't recognize it. She highly doubted that this guy's bones were broken. It's so miserable, it's so miserable. It's only half a step away from meat. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Captain, here it is. B. Leonwa suddenly slapped her head and held a baggage in both hands. What's this? Natsuki jumped off the mountain of meat and asked doubtfully. Sparse clothes, of course. B. Leonwa said as she unpacked the bag and took out the contents. As expected, it was a Death Tyrant outfit and Captain Haori, as well as a fine silk brocade belt with the same color as Natsuki's scabbard, well made, a bit like a tie, but much longer than a tie, and a waist protector of the same style. Although we are on the battlefield, the captain must also pay attention to his appearance. This has a great boosting effect on our morale. B. Renhua helped Natsuki change clothes like a little maid, her technique was very skillful. Natsuki didn't refuse either. The death armor has special meaning to Shinigami. As for Captain Haori, it's just a cheap decoration in the eyes of the nobles. Change your clothes and put on your Haori. Then gently wrap the orange brocade belt around the neck, and let the two sides naturally hang down to the waist. The waist protector is wrapped on the inside and fixed with the belt of the death boss suit. Natsuki lowered his head and glanced, and now no one would believe him if he said that he was not a Shihuan Chiani. Compared with the real thing, it was just a brass earring. But he wasn't interested in getting his ears pierced, so he didn't have to do that. It's a coincidence. Just when Natsuki had just changed his clothes, a figure suddenly appeared, half kneeling on the ground, touching the ground with his fist, and bowed his head respectfully and urgently to report. The commander-in-chief issued an urgent order. The enemy's main force is gathering towards the central area, preparing to capture our headquarters in one fell swoop. He ordered the captains of each squad to reinforce the area at any cost to the direction of the first team building and fight the enemy to the death. Understood. Do you have any other tasks? No, my mission is to convey the order to you. The man raised his head and showed a somewhat embarrassed face. I guess I had a lot of trouble searching along the way. Leonwa, you take him to gather the surrounding soldiers. After gathering enough people, move closer to the first team building. But don't really go in. Just guerrilla around. If you encounter a small group of enemies, find a way to eat them. Get rid of him, eliminate the opponent's vitality as much as possible, and let them pass if you encounter troublesome ones. Yes, although they have only known each other for a short period of time, they are both ruthless people who can travel through the battlefield and search for targets. The enemy's large forces are already gathering, so sending them to eat the remaining small forces naturally does not pose any risk. Even if they encounter a tough fight, nothing will happen, because the other party is eager to respond to Yuacha's call and has no time to tangle with them. Natsuki used the Shunpo he had just comprehended and disappeared from the spot. This time, he really realized it on his own, and it had nothing to do with the prompt bar. But then again, Natsuki originally expected to see flying legs, and then understood Shunpo. Coupled with the perfect light that he had already mastered, this could not be combined into a Hong Kong technique, or Hong Kong technique, somersault cloud or something. But the prompt bar has been silent for a long time. Natsuki suppressed the slight disappointment in his heart and rushed to the scene quickly. He doesn't know the way. But he could feel where there were more people, where the Reiatsu were stronger. Although I didn't see anyone in person, I already had an image of Yoruichi and Yamamoto Genryusai in my mind. The Reiatsu of these two people is really as vast as the sea, and Kamui is as prison-like. It's like two invisible mountains standing there, facing each other across the sky. They are as powerful as mountains. The mountains roar and the tsunami surges in all directions, giving people a heartfelt shock. The further you go, the greater the importance of awareness. Because no one's Reiatsu can surpass theirs. Being close means being crushed, which is a kind of self-destruction, so a strong awareness is needed to fight against the survival instinct. Finally, arrived at the destination. Hiss. The tragic battles that unfolded in front of him didn't move Natsuki very much, but when he saw a very ordinary background that was not tall and strong, he took a slight breath of air. What kind of movement is this? What the eyes see is the back of the person. But cognitively, I felt that it was a big sun. Just hanging from the top, it is so dazzling that people can't look directly at it. In comparison, Reiatsu, who has made rapid progress through hard work and various opportunities, is a candlelight. First-class spiritual power. Second-class spiritual power. Third-class spiritual power. They are all captain level. But it's also captain level. Can the gap in reality be so big? So much so that he didn't pay much attention to the colleagues next to him. Hey, what are you doing? Don't tell me that you were frightened by the number of enemy troops. A head suddenly popped over. Eye patch, purple twintails. A somewhat neurotic, gloomy and irritable expression. Natsuki glanced at the young girl who was also wearing Captain Haori and was covered in blood, and looked at the mighty Quincy army ahead with a chuckle. I'm wondering how I can kill the enemy admiral before you do. Chapter 35. First generation gathers, all villains. Advertise here. Then have you thought about it? Captain of the 6th Division of the First Generation, Saito Immortal grinned and let out a terrifying laugh. This was not a mockery of Natsuki's incompetence, because her words were full of expectations. Certainly. Natsuki pushed her head back casually, and walked to the left-hand side of the man at the front of the battle line like a noble prince, with his hands folded and hidden in his cuffs. 1.5 lengths behind. If you stay away. It seemed as if he could escape at any moment, disappear into the shadows, and become a surprise force that no one could have imagined. Tisk, it's like I didn't say anything. Saito curled his lips, but this lazy guy had an amazing killing efficiency, but he was not obsessed with killing the enemy at all, so there was no need to worry about being killed, but there was another one, who was a powerful enemy. The corner of his right eye glanced at the woman with disheveled hair and a sense of loneliness. In this organization called Gote, which is actually a murderous group, this woman is the only one who goes crazy and even a madman like her has to stay away. Captains, go out into battle. At this time, there was a loud shout. More inspiring and shocking than any kakuzu. Because the person who speaks out is the strongest person who leads the Gote 13. Now in the prime of life, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. With an order, some people restrained their arrogance, some restrained their arrogance, some restrained their cunning, some restrained their viciousness. These demons and monsters who were gathered together and dressed as Captain Yori stood on the same front. Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes were dark and indifferent, as if there were no emotions at all, only a cold and murderous intention that was so pure that it could make the world hang upside down. Others were more or less infected by it and showed their ferocious side. Just 13 people. The team headed by Yuhabak on the opposite side was roughly estimated to have several hundred people. However, the sense of oppression exuded by both sides is equal. Even in terms of momentum, there is a faint tendency to overwhelm the Quincy side. Because no matter how much gravel is gathered, it will not be harder than steel. As if to prove this, Yamamoto Genryusai drew his sword and danced, and monstrous fire rose into the sky, hanging upside down from the sky like a volcanic eruption, covering the area where both the enemy and ourselves were. From now on, no one can leave here. The raging sea of fire is by no means comparable to ordinary flames. No way out. It's the same for both parties. However, the gorgeous and bright firelight illuminated the backs of the 13 people, but did not illuminate their faces. Bathed in such heat, they were like a group of resentful ghosts and gods, watching their prey with a sinister smile. Many Quincy's hands and feet are cold, and the cold air rushes straight to their foreheads, giving them a terrifying feeling of having no way to go to the sky or to the earth. While they were looking at each other in silence, a figure leapt up and directly destroyed Queshi's camp. Natsuki saw it clearly. It's Yunohana Retsu. No, she should be called Yunohana 8000 Ryu. Grandmaster is a killer with all swordsmanship. First generation Kenpachi was the first to start the group. Although she is a woman, she gives people a feeling that transcends the distinction between men and women and brings deep-rooted fear to people. Draw the sword and swing it down. In a flash, several Quincy in the front row acting as a guard of honor were cut down neatly. It seemed that only one sword was struck, but several of them lost their heads. It was strangely strong. Seeing her on board, the other captains started charging into the formation without saying a word. It's nothing more than a tiger entering a flock of sheep. Natsuki is a very calm person, but he was also infected by their pride-filled madness. The fighting spirit in his blood seemed to have belonged to someone and gradually revived due to the resonance, making his eyes scarlet red. He didn't even bother to hide his ability, and kicked him whenever he went up. Blow someone's head off. The Reiatsu light arrows shot from all directions were eaten by Natsuki with a sharp breath. The next moment, the Reiatsu on his body exploded, blowing away the enemies who tried to attack and kill him. Except for one person. I smell Hubert's breath on you. It seems that he has died at your hands. Boom. Along with the words, a huge fist came. Parried by Natsuki with one arm. Looking up, he saw a tall and burly man with a scar on his forehead. My name is Algora. When you meet Hubert in hell, remember to tell him that I killed you. Algora moved his right foot away, only to see Annihilation cross spread out, converging into a larger circle. He punched with his back hand at a speed that was inconsistent with his body shape, causing Natsuki's feet to sink into the ground, using the force to bounce into the sky to avoid being affected by the subsequent burst of spiritual flames. Boom. Quite a sharp offensive, plus the attitude of being familiar with Hubert. There is no doubt that he is another strong man from the Quincy camp. Those who are not captain level cannot compete. However, even though Natsuki has not mastered Bankai, he is as strong as the captain, and the azure flames converged inwards, gathering a little and sinking into Natsuki's body. He raised his head and said to Algra, who was a little dazed, if Hubert is still alive, he will definitely remind you not to use spirit attacks on me. Because that would make me owe you a favor and then I would have to say a few nice words for you on your epitaph. As he spoke, a bright golden light appeared on Natsuki's body. Call out. A sharp sound broke through the air. The perfect jumping ability starts, supplemented by Shunpo acceleration control. Makes a sound similar to ringing. Natsuki swung a punch, and Algora raised his head to avoid it. However, when Natsuki twisted his elbow in the air, he had no other choice but to cross his arms and catch the punch. The previous sharp offensive failed to work, and in turn became a part of Natsuki's strength, and the consequences were truly fed back to Algora. Even with the static blood equipment on, he was still beaten to pieces, with blood flying everywhere, and you could almost see the bones inside. Then Natsuki's freed right hand bombarded Algora's face with golden light, knocking him deep into the earth's surface. If Hubert saw this scene, he would definitely shout, "That's right. That's it." Chapter 36 Young Busby. Advertise here. Just when Natsuki was about to finish the attack, a black projectile exploded in front of his eyes, creating a huge smoke screen that not only blocked his field of vision, but also interfered with his spiritual sense. By the time he got out of the smoke screen, Algra had been rescued. There are many rescuers. They are in groups of 3 and 5, and their positions are clever. Apparently the Quincy has come to his senses and knows not to be led around. In particular, high-end combat power cannot be easily compromised. Otherwise, no matter how many people there are, they are just meat on the chopping board, to be slaughtered by others. There are really so many talents. Natsuki glanced around and realized that these people were not weak in strength, and they must also be members of the Star-Crossed Knights. In order to complete his victory in one battle, Yoruichi really took great pains. The talented people in the Quincy clan were wiped out in one fell swoop. Perhaps the combat technology is not as advanced as the bloody battle, but with the background of an entire ethnic group here, the overall strength may not be much weaker than that of the future members of the Knights. It doesn't matter the weakness, just make up for it with the difference in quantity. The combined strength of a dozen Quincy's who are stronger than the vice captain but weaker than the captain, the fighting power they unleash is extremely impressive. If it weren't for a special case like him, how could an ordinary captain be their opponent? It's no wonder that after this battle, only a handful of first-generation captains survived. After all, they don't have Natsuki's restraint against the Quincy. Only cruel and ruthless. This cruelty and ruthlessness also left a deep impression on Yoruichi, which he will never forget even after thousands of years. To describe it in one word is PTSD. Natsuki has only just debuted, and has not accumulated enough murderous energy, but he is not merciless when killing people. The intensity soared. The situation has reached a fever pitch. Under such pressure, both parties involved in the war became red-eyed. Hiding one's strength at this time is tantamount to a crime. For more than 20 captain-level experts to fight under the same sky is a man-made disaster, let alone being trapped in the same war zone for melee. The night sky cracked and the earth sank. Every spirit in the air is stained with the smell of blood. What a terrifying destructive power this is. As strong as Yamamoto Genryu Sai, he had to go all out to suppress the aftermath of the life and death fight between the two sides, but he couldn't spare any effort. Ever since, it didn't take long. Most of the sea of fire that enclosed the battlefield had dissipated. There is no way to stop people from coming in or out. Both sides were fighting to the death in the sea of fire, and the fire did not stop outside the sea. Tragic scenes were staged in the surrounding streets. What Yoruichi gathered was only the members of the guards and knights and the senior cadres who commanded the holy soldiers. There were also a large number of holy soldiers and senior combatants waiting to fight against the Shinigami. However, they also knew that the battle situation here was the most important, so they fought hard and moved closer to the central area. B. Renka obeyed Natsuki's orders and gathered the defeated soldiers everywhere. Regardless of whether they belonged to the second division or not, as long as they still had the strength to fight, they would not let them go. In this way, a team of hundreds of people was pulled up and rushed to the central theater. Move around and intercept the Quincy reinforcements. The results were remarkable at first, but as time went by, more and more holy soldiers and Shinigami came, and the level of tragedy and chaos was directly proportional. Within a few hundred meters of the Sea of Fire, there is a complete meat-grinding ground. Anyone who steps into it will have to scrape off 2 pieces of meat. It is more difficult to leave a whole body than to reach the sky. Stay in formation. Don't be left alone. Use obstacles to close the distance. B. Renka looks very petite, but she is old enough to be Natsuki's grandmother. She is worthy of being said to be knowledgeable, brave and resourceful, and the remaining soldiers are willing to let her command. Of course, the main reason is that there are too few surviving chief officials. The ones who have suffered the most losses so far are the captains of each division. Most of them did not understand the difference between war and battle, and continued to take the lead as before, but their strength was not strong enough to be able to defeat thousands of them. In the end, they were killed one by the Quincy using long-range concentrated fire tactics. B. Lotus is also one of the witnesses. She learned from the lessons of failure, and held on to these guys who wanted to become suicide squads like a rain, treating them as commandos, relying on cooperation and excellent combat skills to tear apart the lines of defense bravely and rationally. Once the opponent falls into chaos, others can charge with confidence. B. Lotus Flower cannot command everyone. He has neither the prestige nor the ability. And it doesn't always succeed. Behind the brilliant results was a casualty rate as high as 50%. Maybe if you try it a few more times, you will lose your ability to fight before the opponent takes action, and then you will wait to die. Contrary to Natsuki's restraint of the Quincy, Shinigami's side was faintly restrained by the Quincy. Because one side is still using cold weapons, while the other side is holding up guns and cannons. Even if they are not good, they are long-range weapons such as bows and crossbows. They are not incapable of close combat. The Holy Army has specially prepared spearmen, shield guards, etc. early on. A unit that has proven its worth on the battlefield. Anyone who has watched Shinigami knows that sometimes Shinigami fights are very ordinary, and the degree of damage to the surrounding environment is extremely limited. It is like 2 ancient swordsmen competing in skills, and there are not so many fancy spells. After all, Kido is not that easy to train. Therefore, for the majority of the lower-level Shinigami, they mainly relied on slashing, punching, and walking to face the Quincy's guns, cannons, and spiritual bows. They really couldn't gain any advantage. The only reason they could not be crushed unilaterally was because of their superior strength. Compared with them, the Gote 13 1,000 years later are just a bunch of bastards except for the captain class and a few chief officers. There are 3 seats in the dignified 8th Division team, and there is a veteran captain in charge, but he was punched away by Sato, who had not practiced for a few days. It would be strange if the current first-generation glasses girl saw this and was so angry that he beheaded him on the spot. Move forward with patience. Feng Lianhua once again led the team to successfully defeat an artillery squad. But her energy was almost exhausted. Retreat is impossible. Standing at the forefront, you can go wherever you want. The enemy will soon divide their forces to intercept them. I have seen this situation too many times. I was able to run away before because I still had the physical strength, but now, it's too much. It is better to switch from attack to defense, stay in place like a nail, and wait for the opponent to attack, so that your companions can come and attack from the front and back, annihilating the enemy, and at the same time, you and others can survive. There is nothing wrong with the girl's judgment. Natsuki would do the same thing in her place. But she was out of luck. Encountered a tough problem. The visitor's name is Busby. The younger brother of Haschwalth, a core member of the Knights of the Star Cross 1,000 years later. Although he is still very young now and has only been in the group for a few years, the strength gained from practicing hard with Haschwalth as his goal cannot be underestimated. For some personal reasons, Busby ran to a relatively far place. When he arrived, the Sea of Fire had isolated the battlefield, so he vented his anger on others. Be it a Quincy or a Shinigami. They are all the objects for him to vent to. Anyway, what use can a piece of trash that can be killed by myself be used for? However, I will be a little more tolerant of the former, provided that I have enough respect for him, and secondly, I must be brave enough. If it was the latter, bravery would be the biggest cause of his death. Therefore, it is not surprising that Busby would target B. Lotus and his team. Finally I found you. You really know how to run. Are you wearing all black to adapt to the dark like a mouse? Chapter 37 Haschwalth and Natsuki. Advertise here. The appearance of Busby casts a shadow over the hearts of B. Lotus and the others. There is only one enemy. But Reiatsu, who is constantly polishing and refining his body, is not weak at all. At least you have to be the vice captain to deal with him. Enemies of this level are not looked down upon by Natsuki at all, but in the eyes of B. Lotus, they are powerful and deadly enemies. After all, they were in such bad shape. The physical and spiritual energy consumption is close to the limit. B. Leonwa is already considering sacrificing a few people, including herself, so that most people can retreat. But this is also taking a chance. Therefore, it is best to proceed as planned. An enemy is an enemy. And judging from the threat level, it is even more necessary to annihilate it as soon as possible. Looking at your resourcefulness in realizing that you can't run away and decisively deciding to fight to the death, I will give you a decent way to die. Feeling the bone-chilling murderous intent, Busby grinned, and a spirit crossbow appeared on his wrist. His thoughts were the triggers, and dark blue arrows compressed to the extreme were shot out one after another. The dilapidated building where Feng Lianhua and others were located was blown up to the sky. The seemingly slender arrows have far more destructive power than cannonballs. B. Lotus got out of the dust and smoke in disgrace, rolled to the ground continuously to remove the impact, then held on to Zanpakuto and took the lead in charging towards Busby. The other surviving Shinigami seemed to realize something when they saw this scene. They abandoned their rationality and turned into suicide squads again to restrain and hinder Busby. They did not want to hurt him, but only wanted to force him to move. Busby only regarded this as the last struggle of this group of people, and excitedly but calmly shot one Shinigami after another. This experience of being besieged made him not only feel very exciting, but also had a sense of accomplishment. Because he is the one who controls the overall situation. Ignore the difference in numbers and dominate the situation. Take control of the other person's life. This is the behavior of the strong. Yuku, I will definitely catch up with you. Single quote. The fire in Busby's heart grew stronger. Movements are also affected by emotions and are full of strong desire to attack. Under his precise and high-frequency sniping, even with the cover of his teammates, B. Leonwa was still injured, and the clavicle of her right shoulder was pierced. Fortunately, the explosive performance was sacrificed for the sake of speed of fire, otherwise this arrow would have been enough to kill her. The injured B. Leonwa did not give up, but smiled. This scene made Busby feel bad. The feeling of weakness that followed in his body made him even more frightened and angry. What's going on? Did I get tricked? When? The questions that arise one after another cannot be answered. Only Hibiscus herself knows that she secretly freed Zanpakuto with the help of an exploding smoke screen. Her Zanpakuto ability is that as her physical strength decreases, her spiritual power decreases, making the Reiatsu she releases full of toxicity. But there is a problem, that is, the less spiritual power, the less Reiatsu can be released, so she must try her best to close the distance with the opponent. Even if she is injured, it does not matter, because the injury will also lead to a decline in status, disguised form increased toxicity. The toxic effects are paralysis, weakness, slowed thinking and other negative effects that ensue. The more strenuous exercise an affected person does, the faster the onset of toxicity. Along the way, Feng Lianhua led the team and often used this ability to assassinate the enemy, which can be said to be a great achievement. Therefore, when the other remnants saw her behaving like this, they knew what to do without communicating. As Zanpakuto's ability. Too careless. Thousands of years later, Busby would never have fallen for such a crude trick, but now he could do nothing but feel annoyed. Seeing that his speed had slowed down, Feng Lianhua stepped forward and struck him with a knife. The blades are in direct contact. The toxic Reiatsu mixed into the blood circulation, causing Busby's condition to further worsen. It's really untouchable and immovable. The only way out is to rely on strength to win the battle quickly. This ability is extreme and is a double-edged sword. Good condition, poor effect. Only when the condition is not good can the effect be good. But fighting the enemy with residual health, not to mention how much combat power can be exerted, is meaningless if you are killed first or lose the ability to fight, but the probability of this happening is not low. But with his teammates at his side to help, Busby's plan for a quick fix fell through. The girl seized the opportunity and stepped forward. Using all the remaining strength in his body, he slashed at Busby's neck with the knife. At this moment, Busby couldn't move to parry, let alone dodge, and could only watch the blade approaching unwillingly. Exclamation mark quote. Question mark quote. The critical moment has long passed. Busby's head was still on his shoulders. He looked shocked. B. Lotus Flower also opened her eyes wide, her face full of disbelief. Not just because Busby is still alive, also because her Zanpakuto was broken. The broken piece swirled and flew not far behind. The instigator of this result was standing beside the two of them, holding a sword in one hand and a bloody head in the other. Blonde hair shawl, extraordinary handsome. A military uniform is full of traces of war. It makes this young man who suddenly inserts himself into the battlefield look a little more realistic. It is not difficult to see from the raised sword edge that he cut off the Zanpakuto of B. Lotus with one sword, and also destroyed the hard-won opportunity to kill Busby. Why Yuku? After walking between life and death, Busby was covered in cold sweat and looked at the blonde young man who saved his life with a very complicated expression. On the battlefield, caution is more important than strength. Haschwalth preached in a calm tone. Busby's breath froze, and his eyes showed even stronger unwillingness. The clenched fists were shaking. In the face of the facts, he was powerless to refute. At this time, Haschwalth turned his attention to the bee lotus, his eyelashes trembling slightly, as if he had some sympathy for the struggling mortals from a superior person. I shouldn't interrupt others fighting at will, but on the battlefield, this rule does not apply. Bee lotus flower felt something was wrong and wanted to retreat. But her weak body was not enough to support her to do more things. No one present could clearly see Haschwalth's movement of swinging the sword. It was as if something was destined to cause disaster. When he intended to kill someone, the other party would only die. Hiding is meaningless, and so is resisting. Fortunately, the slash that was like the passage of time was sharp enough and invisible, so there would be no unnecessary pain. But if a third party intervenes, this seemingly absolute fate will reveal its truth. Having to follow another rule. That is, stronger and stronger. The sword edge that reappeared stayed in midair, tightly held by a hand wrapped in golden light, unable to move in or out. I thought you rushed out in a hurry to do something, but it turned out that you were bullying my subordinates. For this reason, you did not hesitate to put more pressure on other companions. Are you worthy of being the leader of the Star-Crossed Knights? Natsuki held the bee lotus flower in his arms with one hand and grasped the sword's edge with the other, with a very sarcastic smile on his lips.